Chapter 489. Golden Core. Tsing Hui looked at the ball of energy in his body that was completely condensed from blazing energy. Even though it was in a dormant state, it was still emitting a terrifying power. Golden Core. This was his golden core. Moreover, just as he had guessed earlier, his golden core had already reached the high level by relying on the rich foundation accumulated from the divine-grade battle body. Compared to ordinary golden core realm cultivators, his golden core was obviously emitting a trace of gold. However, what surprised him was that apart from this gold color, the blazing aura emitted from the golden core had far exceeded his expectations. The golden core is actually a highly condensed body of energy in the body. When I stepped into the never-ending realm, I chose to build a fusion reactor in my body. At that time, the attribute of my vital essence had already changed, becoming more violent and blazing. Now, even if I compress it into a golden core, the degree of its blazing and violent intensity has not decreased by much. Tsing Hui took a small breath and calmed his mind. Once an ordinary cultivator formed a golden core, the most important thing was to nourish it. During this process, the golden core would continue to grow, advance, and mature until the energy it contained reached a critical point. Then, it would complete its transformation. As for the result of the transformation, either the golden core would collapse, and one's cultivation would go down the drain. At the moment of the golden core's collapse, the body might explode from the power of the golden core and die on the spot. Or, it was to be broken and then re-established, just like the birth of a nascent soul after the core was broken. It evolved into a remarkable power and advanced to a whole new realm, which belonged to the realm of the Almighty. But now, because the attribute of the gold core was too violent and blazing, his gold core could not be said to be peaceful at all. Although the advantage was that every time he used his gold core, it could have an extremely terrifying explosive force, but the consequence was that his gold core was extremely unstable. If he was not careful, it would collapse. If I want to subdue this golden core, I'll have to either break through the spiritual level again, reaching at least level 115 or above, or I'll have to use time to slowly wear down the blazing destructive power within the golden core. I'll have to wait until my body has completely adapted to this power, then continue to nurture it, and eventually derive a divine ability. Unfortunately, Tsing Hui sensed the Torch Dragon Divine Soul in his spiritual world. After 3 to 4 months, Torch Dragon's soul had already reached the limit of collapse. Even if he deliberately split a portion of his mind to suppress Torch Dragon's soul and prevent it from collapsing, he estimated that it would only last for another month or 2 at most. I can only forcefully condense a peerless grade Jin Dan. However, in the process of condensing the peerless gold core, with the help of the backtracking technique, Tsing Hui's eyes flashed. In the next moment, many of the cultivation resources in the attic that he had moved into his personal space were once again absorbed by him. One by one, they were refined and turned into pure energy that was injected into the golden elixir. The golden core, which was already unstable and filled with a blazing, violent, and destructive aura, was completely broken when more power was poured into it. Before Tsing Hui could raise the power of the golden core to the peak of the upper grade, the entire golden core had already lost control and collapsed with a loud bang, rumble. The violent and destructive air waves wantonly swept out, instantly tearing Tsing Hui's body into pieces and burning it to ashes. The scattered power crazily attacked the cultivation room that originally belonged to the hidden sword venerable, causing the cultivation room that belonged to the Almighty to rumble and shake non-stop. Fortunately, this was the cultivation room of an Almighty. Otherwise, with the terrifying energy contained in Tsing Hui's golden core, once it erupted, the entire burial sword peak would probably be razed to the ground. The destructive energy aftermath would also spread out from the burial sword peak and sweep out dozens of kilometers or even close to 100 kilometers without any reduction in power, igniting and burning everything within the range. After a few hours, Tsing Hui's body that had been reduced to ashes was condensed again. The backtracking technique. This kind of divine technique that did not follow the law of conservation of energy and did not conform to logic had forcefully backtracked him from ashes. Even now, the vast and destructive aura in the cultivation room had not completely dissipated. After carefully recalling the experience of the golden core's imbalance just now, Xinghui closed his eyes. While waiting for the backtracking technique to cool down, he did his best to absorb as much experience as possible in order to minimize the mistakes that he would make in his cultivation in the future. The backtracking technique's cooldown was over, and Xinghui's eyes flashed with a bright light. Again. The next moment, in his personal space, he took out treasures that were worth tens of Taoist rhymes and absorbed and refined the energy contained in them one by one. Very soon, the extremely unstable upper-grade golden core in his body continued to rise. Not long after, it had surpassed the critical point that Xinghui's golden core had exploded the last time and was climbing towards the peak of the upper-grade golden core. But this time, it was still not peak. The golden core was once again out of balance. The consequences of the golden core's imbalance naturally evolved into a new round of explosion. 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 24 days. Xinghui spent 24 days and failed a total of 12 times before he finally pushed the upper-grade golden core to the peerless grade. Peerless grade golden core. Even among the forces of the First Hall, the 3 sects, the 6 schools, and the 9 clans in Tianhuang mainland, they might not be able to nurture a cultivator with a peerless grade golden core in a generation. As long as they could ensure that the cultivator was loyal to their sect, those sects would definitely do their best to complete the nurturing of the golden core and let it mature to the point where it could give birth to divine powers. After all, cultivating a peerless grade golden core was equivalent to crossing the threshold of becoming a powerful figure. And powerful figures, even among the forces of the First Hall, the 3 sects, the 6 schools, and the 9 clans, they belonged to the top group and were the true decision-makers of the sections. If they were in the outside world, a powerful figure would be able to create a first-rate sect. Xinghui did not dare to be happy about the condensation of the peerless grade golden core. At this moment, his Torch Dragon Divine Soul had already reached the critical point of collapse. As the golden core advanced, he did not hesitate to fuse the power of the Torch Dragon Divine Soul and even the Torch Dragon Divine Body into the peerless grade golden core. In an instant, the golden core that was filled with a blazing, violent, and destructive aura underwent a mysterious change and gradually calmed down. Not only that, as the golden core gradually absorbed the power of the Torch Dragon Divine Soul and the Torch Dragon Divine Body, it also derived various mysterious abilities that were similar to the 3 great talents of the Torch Dragon Divine Body. Seeing this, Xinghui was moved. Why do I have to fuse the Torch Dragon Divine Soul into the Golden Crow Divine Soul and let the Golden Crow Divine Soul devour the power of the Torch Dragon? As I change my cultivation system, my true core will change from the bloodline of the Divine Beasts to the Natal Divine Sword. Even if I really want to fuse it, it should be with the Natal Divine Sword. Only by letting the Natal Divine Sword continuously learn from its strong points and make up for its weak points can it become more powerful. With this thought, Xinghui quickly stopped the fusion of the Golden Crow Divine Soul and the Torch Dragon Divine Body. He waved his hand and the Dragon Abyss Sword that had been subdued by his sword will in the past month appeared in front of him. The Dragon Abyss Sword was personally forged by him, so it had an innate affinity with him. In addition, his own sword intent and the sword intent of the Dragon Abyss Sword came from the same source, so it was much easier to refine the Dragon Abyss Sword into his Natal Divine Sword than other divine swords. Dragon Abyss. Torch Dragon, the two of you are fated. Xinghui chuckled. In the next moment, the Torch Dragon Divine Soul appeared and the Torch Dragon Divine Body appeared. Then, the two became one. Using the sword refining method of the Extreme Sword Dao, they directly imprinted into the Natal Divine Sword as if they were branded. With the injection of this power, the Natal Divine Sword shook violently and exuded a powerful aura. It was as if it could not bear the power of the Torch Dragon Divine Soul and Torch Dragon Divine Body. However, the Dragon Abyss Sword was a level 14 divine weapon after all. There was also a powerful sword will in it. In addition, Xinghui also used his own sword will to suppress it. After 3 days, the power of the Torch Dragon finally calmed down. As for completely fusing it into one, He still needed to use his own sword will to polish it. The power of the torch dragon is already at the end of its tether. In addition, the torch dragon divine body is relatively gentle. It is easier to refine it into the dragon abyss sword. The key is the power of the golden crow. Xing Hui sensed the peerless golden core in his body that was formed by the power of the golden crow. There was a kind of happy distress in his heart. It was not that the power of his golden core was too weak, but, with all kinds of accumulation, his golden core was accidentally too strong. It was so strong that it was many times more difficult for him to refine it into his natal divine sword than it was for the power of the torch dragon. However, even though it was difficult, he had to do it. It was just a matter of time. If 1 month was not enough, he would do it in 2 months. If 2 months were not enough, he would do it in half a year. If half a year was not enough, he would do it in 1 year. If 1 year was not enough, he would do it in 3 years. He would eventually be able to complete the refining of the power of the golden crow, the power of the torch dragon, and the natal divine sword. From then on, his sword Tao would no longer be an empty concept of sword Tao. Instead, it would truly have the ability to fight and protect. Swoosh! A ray of sword light landed steadily in a lush mountain forest. Although the forest was lush, the mountain was filled with the presence of people. Less than 100 kilometers from the mountain range was a large city with a population of 1 million. There was also a rather famous sect on the mountain range, called the Sword of Cosmic Light Sect. Even though the Sword of Cosmic Light Sect had only been established for less than 100 years, it had already become the largest sect in an area of almost 10,000 kilometers. There were over 10 Golden Core Realm experts in the sect and over 100 Saint Realm experts in the sect. The most shocking thing was that there was an almighty figure in the sect. A large sect like that might be weaker among first-rate sects, but compared to ordinary second-rate sects, it was enough for them to look up to. Coupled with the fact that the Sword of Cosmic Light sect seemed to be extremely good at business, countless people came to the Sword of Cosmic Light sect every year to learn from their master. At this moment, as the ray of sword light landed in the Sword of Cosmic Light sect, several Golden Core experts came up to receive it at the same time. They bowed respectfully. "Greetings, founding master." The ray of sword light dispersed, revealing the person inside. If Xing Hui were here right now, he would definitely be able to recognize him immediately. To no surprise, this man was the powerful being who had gone to the eastern wasteland and captured him alive before torturing him for over 20 hours, Remnant Sword. After 15 months of traveling, he had finally returned to Heaven's wasteland. He had returned to the sect that he had created and secretly hung under the Heaven's Dome sect. Has anything important happened in the sect during this time? "There's nothing important that needs to disturb you, founding master," said a Golden Core cultivator respectfully. A Golden Core realm cultivator said respectfully. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly said, "There is a disciple who said that he found a clue about the person you specially wanted to ask about." "The person I wanted to ask about?" A gleam of light immediately shone through Remnant Sword's eyes. He appeared before the Golden Core cultivator with a flash and asked impatiently, "Where is that person?" Chapter 490. In the Sword of Cosmic Light sect. A man who had reached the transcendent realm bowed respectfully to Remnant Sword. Disciple Jiang Fong greets Ancestral Master. "Okay, tell me about the clue you got. If it's useful, I'll reward you handsomely," Remnant Sword said in a deep voice. He had asked everyone in the living room to leave. Even though the people in the Sword of Cosmic Light sect were his personal force and were all loyal to him, the sect was still under the sky. He couldn't guarantee that no one was loyal to the sky. "The clue I got is related to the Hidden Sword Continent." Ancestral Master, didn't you ask us to find someone? According to Ancestral Master, this person looks very young and is as powerful as a Golden Elixir Realm expert. He also cultivates the bloodlines of the Torch Dragon and the Golden Crow. What's more incredible is that he's cultivated both bloodlines to the Divine Grade Battle Body level. A friend I met in the Chaos Divine Palace is a disciple of the Hidden Sword sect. The mountain they're on, the North Moon Peak, is being suppressed by an expert who's also very young and has both the Golden Crow and the Torch Dragon. The only problem is, He's much more powerful than a golden elixir realm expert. Young, golden crow divine body, torch dragon divine body. Remnant Sword's eyes flashed when he heard the information. There were many people who had awakened the golden crow bloodline and the torch dragon bloodline in this world. Even those who had cultivated both bloodlines to the level of a divine grade battle body were not uncommon. However, it was rare for someone to have both bloodlines and a divine grade battle body at the same time, especially when the person looked so young. Very good. The hidden sword continent. Remnant Sword's eyes flashed. I'll verify it with this information. You've reached the transcendent realm? You haven't reached the transcendent realm because your soul is too weak? I happen to have a strand of vital spirit chi. I believe it'll be helpful to you. Consider it a reward for finding this clue for me. Jiang Feng was pleasantly surprised. Thank you, Ancestral Master. Remnant Sword gave the vital spirit chi to Jiang Feng and said sternly, remember, you can't tell anyone else about this. Don't worry, Ancestral Master. I won't let anyone know even if I die. Okay, go. Jiang Feng retreated happily after obtaining a strand of nascent divinity chi. The market price of the primordial spirit chi was close to 20 Dao runes. Even if it was purchased internally, it would cost more than 10 Dao runes. For a cultivator of the Heaven Wasteland domain, the income of this amount of Dao runes was almost equivalent to 10 years of his income. If he sold it, whether it was a 10th grade divine weapon or a 9th grade armor, it would be a piece of cake. Hidden Sword Continent. It said that there's an almighty there. However, I remember that they seem to have designs on the Hidden Sword Continent. Remnant Sword's eyes flashed. The next moment, his power was projected into the Chaos Temple. As his appearance changed, he teleported again and appeared in a vast personal space. This personal space was not inferior to the personal space of celestial being in the sky. It was the core of the heavenly ways communication in the Chaos Temple. There were as many experts in the heavenly way as there were clouds. It was not strange for someone to have a 10th grade personal space. Moreover, the level of management of this personal space was more than double that of celestial being in the sky. In the sky of this personal space, there were 2 suns. The brilliance of the suns was not inferior to that of the sun core in the sky. In particular, there was a divine beast golden crow entrenched in the core of one of the suns. Its aura could be said to be mighty and mighty. Even Remnant Sword, a powerful expert, was frightened when he glanced at the divine beast golden crow. Divine beast? That was a real adult divine beast. A divine beast at the first level of the Saint Realm. It was said that the Heavenly Tao had been thinking of ways to nurture this divine beast over the years in order for it to grow again. If it could be nurtured to the 14th level, which was the 2nd level of the Saint Realm, its battle strength would leap to the top of the Infinite Wasteland domain and would not be inferior to the top 10 experts on the Infinite Wasteland domain list. In addition to this divine beast, there were several other holy lands in this huge personal space. For example, in the tomb of the divine beast Hundun, there was the corpse of an adult Hundun. In addition, there was the Kuanpeng Mountain, the Qilin Peak, the Nanming Volcano, the Azure Dragon Sea, and so on. The divine beast Kuanpeng, the divine beast Qilin, the Vermilion Bird, the Azure Dragon, and so on lived there. This kind of foundation was far from what other forces could imagine. This was also the reason why the celestial being, the divine wilderness, and the eternal being allied together dared to go against the entire Chaos Divine Hall. If not for the fact that the 3 Chaos organizations were unable to truly cooperate wholeheartedly, the Chaos Divine Hall in this world would not have space for the other Chaos organizations to exist. Remnant Sword looked at the 2 blazing suns in the sky for a moment and lowered his head with a complicated expression. Back then, when he found out about his identity, he almost instinctively denied his relationship with the Li Hen holy man. However, as time passed, he was stuck in the Aurus core stage and could not break through. The vast amount of resources required to form a superior grade Aurus core almost made him despair. In addition, he later witnessed the strength of the heavenly way. Powerful Saint Realm Tao masters and adult divine beasts with destructive power instantly destroyed his last bit of persistence in the celestial being. He understood that if he really stubbornly stayed in the celestial being, there would be a day when the heavenly way launched an attack on the celestial being. Therefore, after a long and painful choice, he chose to face reality and made a decision that maximized his own interests. Thus, he turned his back on the celestial being and joined the heavenly way. Reality proved that he was right. With the support of the heavenly axiom, he had cultivated a remarkable ability and possessed strength and status that ordinary people could not imagine. In terms of mentality, there had also been a huge change. Just like now, the entire sky had become very worried because of the threat of the heavenly axiom, and he, as he belonged to the heavenly way, there was no need for him to worry at all. All he needed to do was deliver a fatal blow to the celestial being the moment the heavenly way and the celestial being clashed, and then enjoy the great merit. When he thought up to there, the surprise in his eyes gradually vanished. With a flash, he had already appeared on a mountain peak that belonged to him. Afterwards, he waved his hand gently and an external member of the heavenly way immediately appeared before him. The member bowed politely and said, "What are your orders, true Lord Enlai?" Enlai. That was the code name of the heavenly way. Get the disciple of the sect lord of the Scarlet Mystery sect, North Moon Xian, and the people connected to their mountain peak to come see me. This true Lord. The heavenly way was different from the celestial being. There was a strict hierarchy in the heavenly way. It was nowhere near as relaxed as the celestial being. The members of the heavenly way were divided into 8 ranks. At the very top were obviously the 8 Tao paragons, below them were the 36 Tao lords, and below them was the true lord that Cruel Sword currently belonged to. Neither North Moon Xian nor Bei Shentong, who had joined the heavenly way later, were true lords, so summoning the two of them was obviously a piece of cake for him. Before long, North Moon Xian, Bei Shentong, and the previous lord of the North Moon Peak, Mu Xingyi, appeared before Cruel Sword at the same time. Greetings to the true lord. May I ask why the true lord has summoned us? I want to ask you about some information. Cruel Sword had an innate mental advantage over Bei Shentong and the others, so there was obviously no need for him to waste time worrying about their feelings. He cut straight to the chase. Your North Moon Peak followed the plan of our heavenly way to take control of the hidden Sword Continent, but over a year ago, a mysterious person interfered with your plans. I want to ask you about the specific information of that mysterious person, such as his abilities, methods, chaotic level, divine weapons, and so on. That mysterious person? North Moon Xian, Bei Shentong, and the others looked at one another. In the end, Mu Xingyi, who had personally clashed with Tsing Hui, stepped forward and said, "That mysterious person's battle prowess is extremely great. We once guessed that he should be a peak expert who has condensed a high-grade golden core, but as we thought back over the years and speculated a little, we discovered that his cultivation should not have reached golden core yet. He's probably only at the endless realm. However, he has awakened the bloodlines of the Golden Crow and Torch Dragon, and he has cultivated both bloodlines to the level of a divine tier battle physique, which is why he can erupt with battle prowess that's no weaker than a high-grade golden core. In particular, he has a supreme treasure that can turn into 7 suns once he unleashes it. The 7 suns fuse with one another and form a strange existence similar to a domain, allowing his battle prowess to skyrocket. 7 suns forming something similar to a domain? Mu Xingyi's introduction immediately made Cruel Sword's eyes flash. He suddenly thought of the series of reports that the Fortune Profound sect, a subordinate organization of the Heavenly Tao in the Eastern Wastelands, had sent over when it was destroyed. He immediately waved his hand, and an image appeared before Mu Xingyi. To no surprise, it was the scene of Tsing Hui unleashing the 10 suns burn the heavens. Is it this ability? Yes. It's this ability. Mu Xingyi looked at it and immediately agreed in a hurry. Does he still possess the recovery ability of the 10th step? Yes. His recovery ability has definitely reached the 10th step. Do you understand him so well, true monarch? Mu Xingyi replied in pleasant surprise. Very good. I've finally found you. A sliver of excitement flashed through Cruel Sword's eyes when he received Mu Xingyi's confirmation. This was a son of chaos at the 40th step. However, this was not the main point. The main point was the secret behind how he had reached the 40th step. Was it because of Bei Zhao's supreme divine artifact? Do you have any trustworthy people in the Hidden Sword sect? I want you to pay close attention to this kid's movements and report to me immediately if there's any news. We do, but that Yu Qing brat has been chosen by our Hidden Sword sect's ancestor, the Hidden Sword Venerable. He has been receiving the careful teachings of the Hidden Sword Venerable for more than a year. We have no way of coming into contact with him. Hidden Sword Venerable? Cruel Sword frowned. He naturally had some understanding of this ancient almighty who had cultivated for thousands of years. According to what I know, the Hidden Sword Venerable is about to die of old age. How can he still teach disciples? True monarch, you may not know this. Not only did our ancestor not die, but he also broke through the shackles of his cultivation and stepped into a higher realm. We estimate that he has already reached the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. He should have relied on this breakthrough to regain his vitality and extend his life. Lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. When Cruel Sword heard this, his expression instantly became somewhat ugly. Tsing Hui had actually been chosen by a peak saint expert? It would be troublesome to capture him alive now. It seemed like he could only wait until he left the Hidden Sword sect alone before taking action. Furthermore, this time, in order to ensure that nothing goes wrong, he would have to make a trip to the Li Hen Holy Man's palace and borrow that supreme treasure. Chapter 491. Hidden Sword Continent, Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Calculating the time, it had been 2 years since the Hidden Sword Venerable had erupted with sword intent and Qing Su had set foot on the Burial Sword Peak. Even though the Hidden Sword Venerable had never appeared to tidy up the Hidden Sword sect and Qing Su had never emerged from the Burial Sword Peak, the situation of the Divine Grace Merchant Association had clearly improved greatly during this time. With the help of Su Zhao's business methods and the resources from the North Moon Peak, the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce had recovered to its peak. At present, not only had the scale of the trade association expanded by several times, the number of experts in the trade association had also increased by a large margin. Not only had the number of never-ending stage elders increased to 6, but they had also recruited 2 golden core stage experts. As for transformative stage and true energy stage cultivators, they had also increased by several dozen people. Su Xiao, Su Tong, Xing Lian, Si Tong and the rest of the core members of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce were extremely grateful to Tsing Hui. It's been 2 years. I wonder when Mr. Yu Qing will come down from the Burial Sword Peak. Su Xiao looked in the direction of the Burial Sword Peak with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. As the number of experts in the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce increased, coupled with Hidden Sword Supreme and Tsing Hui's power, Su Xiao had gradually become idle after more than a year. He was now with Su Tong, Su Yuan and the other core members of the Chamber of Commerce, enjoying the free time. Mr. Yu Qing is the only sword Dao genius in the Hidden Sword sect in the past few hundred years to have attracted the 100 Swords chant at the same time. He must have become the personal disciple of Hidden Sword Supreme. He must have been in seclusion during this period. Cultivators who can form the Golden Core have at least 1,000 years of life. 2 years is a long time for us, but for them, it is only a month at most. Su Tong said with a smile. He shouldn't have become the disciple of Hidden Sword Supreme, right? Mr. Yu Qing also has a master, but it should be true that he's receiving guidance from Venerable Hidden Sword. After all, Mr. Yu Qing's master sent him to the Hidden Sword continent with the intention of receiving guidance from Venerable Hidden Sword. If that's the case, does that mean that my master and Venerable Hidden Sword are actually master and disciple? Can I call Hidden Sword Supreme Grandmaster from now on? Su Yuan was overjoyed. In these 2 years, not only had his cultivation improved and reached the realm of true qi, his personality had also become much more cheerful than before. Don't call me that. It would be terrible if you bring trouble to Mr. Yu Qing. Su Xiao hurriedly warned. She had a deep respect for the Hidden Sword Venerable. I don't think so. Mr. Yu Qing has stayed on Hidden Sword Venerable's mountain for 2 years. You can see how much Hidden Sword Venerable values Mr. Yu Qing. Hidden Sword Venerable wouldn't disrespect young Master Yu Qing. Moreover, Young Master Yu Qing is the descendant of Hidden Sword Venerable's disciple. Su Tong said. Hearing this, Su Xiao nodded. At the same time, she sincerely felt that her younger brother was lucky to have such an opportunity. Little brother, you must remember to respect your teacher in the future. You must be filial to your teacher, do you hear me? Our entire Divine Grace Merchant Guild was able to avoid the fate of being annexed because of Mr. Yu Qing's help. If I find out that you disrespected Mr. Yu Qing, I will be the first to not let you off. Sister, don't worry. I respect Master Yu Qing very much. How could I offend him? Su Tong was about to say something when she saw Si Tong quickly flying over on his sword. From afar, she could hear his joyful shout, "It's open! It's open! The Burial Sword Peak's array is open!" The Burial Sword Peak's array is open? Su Tong, Su Xiao and the others were slightly stunned. Then, they immediately realized something. Hidden Sword Venerable and Mr. Yu Qing are coming out. They are definitely coming out. Let's go and see. Let's go and welcome Master Hidden Sword Venerable. Su Xiao said impatiently. Immediately, Su Tong took out her flying sword and brought Su Yuan along. Su Xiao flew on her own sword and the group quickly headed towards the Burial Sword Peak. They weren't the only ones. As the news spread, more and more cultivators flew on their swords and rushed towards the Burial Sword Peak. In an instant, thousands of sword lights converged into a torrent and filled the sky above the Hidden Sword Sect. The sky above the Hidden Sword Sect was dyed in a dazzling light. Master Hidden Sword Venerable has been in seclusion for 100 years. Now that he has finally come out, our Hidden Sword Sect will definitely be able to. Su Xiao's face was filled with joy as she flew on her sword. Before she could finish her words, a sword light had already rushed into the sky. It carried a vast and mighty pressure as it dispersed from the Burial Sword Peak's array. The vast and majestic power and the sharpness that tore through the void immediately shocked all the cultivators who were heading towards the Burial Sword Peak. Not to mention the disciples of the Immortality Stage, even the Endless Stage, Golden Core Stage Elders, Supreme Elders, and Doyens felt a sense of fear from the bottom of their hearts after witnessing the shocking sword chi that shot into the sky from the Burial Sword Peak. Just the shock waves from the shocking sword chi alone gave them the illusion that they would be obliterated the moment they came into contact with it. Patriarch's cultivation has improved even more than before. Although Master stepped into the Transcendent Stage back then, the power of his sword chi hadn't reached such a level. But now, just the power of this sword chi has far surpassed ordinary transcendent powers. If he used his transcendent powers, how powerful would his lethality be? During this period of time, with Master Hidden Sword Venerable in seclusion, countless forces have infiltrated our Hidden Sword continent, wanting to take over our Hidden Sword sect. One of them is the Supreme Elder of the Chaos Organization, another is the Heavenly Tao. In addition, there are many other chaos organizations who are either secretly supporting or simply sending people across the sea to infiltrate our Hidden Sword continent to establish their own sects and threaten our Hidden Sword sect's position as the overlord of the Hidden Sword continent. Now, not only has Master come out of seclusion, his cultivation has also improved greatly. When the time comes, he will definitely be able to crush all these sects and forces into dust like the autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves. Many Endless Stage and Golden Core Stage cultivators who were flying towards the Burial Sword Peak had uncontrollable joy on their faces. Congratulations, Sword Venerable, for your sword principal mastery. On the Burial Sword Peak, Xing Hui was standing not far from Hidden Sword Venerable. He sincerely congratulated Hidden Sword Venerable, who had become one with his sword and released a shocking sword light. After 2 years, Hidden Sword Venerable had finally completed the final fusion of his cultivation and natal legendary sword, combining them into one. As for the sword light just now, just the sword chi that was released from the fusion of the two was far inferior to the sword Hidden Sword Venerate had unleashed with his natal divine sword. Haha, I have to congratulate you too. Your cultivation and natal legendary sword have also completed the fusion, right? I'm very curious to see how powerful your natal legendary sword will be after the fusion. I believe Hidden Sword Venerable is also very curious about the power of his natal legendary sword. This is Hidden Sword Venerable's home ground. Why don't we find a place to test it out? Tsing Hui smiled slightly. Half a month ago, he had also completed the fusion of his cultivation and natal legendary sword. However, at that time, Hidden Sword Venerable was at the critical moment of the fusion of his natal legendary sword. He spontaneously stood guard by Hidden Sword Venerable's side and did not immediately go out. That's what I was thinking, Hidden Sword Venerable said and immediately jumped up. He pointed his finger and a sword chi formed under his feet. Then, he flew out of the formation outside the burial sword peak in an instant. Grandmaster. Greetings, Master. Congratulations, Grandmaster, for your great improvement in cultivation and divine power. The moment Hidden Sword Venerable rushed out of the burial sword peak, many cultivators who had heard the news and appeared outside the burial sword peak saluted in surprise and excitement. Hidden Sword Venerable's figure that was rushing into the void paused slightly. He waved to the crowd and said, "Gather all the leaders of the Hidden Sword sect and gather at the sword appraising platform in 3 days. I have something important to announce. Now, all of you are dismissed. I don't need you to welcome me." After that, he turned around and looked at Tsing Hui, who was following behind him. He smiled and said, "Young friend Tsing Hui, let's go." Sword Venerable, please. Ching Su made a gesture of greeting. I can't wait to see the true power of the ultimate sword principle. Hidden Sword Venerable laughed. In the next moment, the sword light pierced through the air and directly accelerated to the breaking of the sound barrier. With a series of roars, it instantly disappeared into the horizon. Tsing Hui stood in the void and nodded to Su Xiao, Su Tong, Su Yuan and the others who were looking in his direction in surprise. He did not want to keep Hidden Sword Venerable waiting for too long, so he tore through the void and caught up with him. They're out. Hidden Sword Venerable's Grandmaster and Master are out. Mr. Yu Qing is greeting us. Did you see that? Mr. Yu Qing is greeting us. He definitely did not forget to mention our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce to Hidden Sword Venerable. I think Hidden Sword Venerable is gathering all the leaders of the sect at the sword appraising platform in 3 days to talk about our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce and the various matters that have happened in the past 100 years. When Mr. Yu Qing comes back, we will definitely thank him properly. When the people of Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce saw Tsing Hui again, they were instantly excited. Seeing them like this, the people of Hidden Sword sect were naturally envious, while the people of Aurora Peak and North Moon Peak looked bitter. Even the people of Hidden Sword Peak were no exception. Hidden Sword Venerable actually called Mr. Yu Qing young friend just now? He actually treated him as an equal? Sigh, 3 days later? This day has finally come. Even though I've made many mistakes over the years, I can't abandon the Hidden Sword sect like the people of North Moon Peak. When the time comes, if Grandmaster wants to beat me or punish me, I'll accept it. Sword Venerable seems to be even stronger than before. Looks like our Hidden Sword sect will welcome a new round of vigorous development. I've always been a good choice. 3 days later, North Moon Peak, Aurora Peak, and Hidden Sword Peak will all be heavily punished. At that time, our Jade Yang Peak might be able to take the opportunity to rise up. From Sword Venerable's attitude towards Mr. Yu Qing obviously has a lot of influence on him. Looks like I have to find an opportunity to meet Mr. Yu Qing within 3 days. The people of North Moon Peak, Aurora Peak, and Hidden Sword Peak were uneasy, but the people of the other peaks had different thoughts in their hearts. For a time, the entire Burial Sword Peak could be said to be filled with all kinds of emotions. Chapter 492. Whoosh! Both Tsing Hui and Hidden Sword Honorable were extremely fast. They had a natural advantage when it came to tearing through the air with their swords. However, it also consumed a lot of true chi. Fortunately, both Tsing Hui and Hidden Sword Honorable did not care about the consumption of true chi. They flew at full speed. In a moment of excitement, they decided to compete with the speed of their swords. 2 streaks of sword radiance tore through the sky above the continent and crossed thousands of kilometers before rushing into the sky above a huge mountain. No wonder it's a level 10 recovery ability. You're flying with your sword aura and tearing through the void. Your flying speed is much faster than cultivators of the same level. However, the consumption of true chi is 2 to 3 times more than when you're flying with your sword. At this speed, you can fly for 2 hours without panting or blushing. I have to say, the level 10 recovery ability is extremely powerful. The sword venerable of the hidden sword stopped and looked at Qing Su, who seemed to be normal. He was envious. His chaotic level was a mess. Not only did he not have the recovery ability, but he also did not have the sword talent and comprehension ability. Naturally, he was envious of Tsing Hui, who had the recovery ability. You're flattering me, honorable sword honorable. In fact, if you didn't control your flying speed, I wouldn't have been able to catch up with you. Our flying speed originates from the sword chi emitted from our natal swords, and the strength of the sword chi is directly related to the strength of our natal swords. My natal swords have been refined to the level of a celestial phenomenon of heaven and earth expert, so the sword chi derived from it is naturally extremely tyrannical. However, your sword essence is a lot purer than mine, and your growth potential is also above mine. I believe that when you reach the level of celestial phenomenon of heaven and earth, the power of your natal swords will definitely be stronger than mine. Hidden Sword Honorable said. As for Tsing Hui, he did not deny this point. The ultimate sword Dao not only included the power of the natal swords, but also the strength of the core of the sword Dao. The relationship between the two was like a cultivator's cultivation and magic power. They complemented each other and were indispensable. Although Hidden Sword Venerable had a high cultivation level, he was not much better than Tsing Hui in terms of sword essence. Tsing Hui's sword essence was much purer than Hidden Sword Venerable's. In the future, as long as Tsing Hui increased the power of his natal holy sword, his strength would definitely surpass Hidden Sword Venerable's. Tsing Hui, you may have the special ability to recover at the 10th level, but you can't rely on it to fight recklessly. You should be able to sense how weak I am after losing my cultivation. Without the protection of the Constitution, you'll probably be reduced to ashes if you're hit by an enemy. You won't even be able to be reborn from a single drop of blood. Tsing Hui nodded solemnly. At first, the divine body he had forged existed in his body. Even though it hadn't manifested, it was still like he was wearing an extremely strong armor. Once he was attacked, his body would manifest and offset the damage. But now, almost all of the power in his body had been refined into his natal holy sword. Other than some basic true origin, it was equivalent to giving up all of his defenses and exposing himself to the enemy. It would be better if the enemy attacked him head-on. He could use the power of his natal holy sword to forcefully break through any of the enemy's attacks. However, if the enemy chose to sneak up on him, even though his natal holy sword had been infused with the power of a peerless golden core, it wouldn't be strange for it to be killed by a prominent divine expert. The characteristics and drawbacks of the ultimate sword principle make you have to be careful in whatever you do. When you're in trouble, you have to weigh the pros and cons. If you don't want to, you can turn around and leave. Once you do, you can't hold back and kill without mercy. It's best to eliminate the source of trouble. Otherwise, you can't defend against the enemy's secret revenge forever. Hidden Sword Venerable said solemnly. Tsing Hui nodded solemnly. All of his power had been refined into his natal holy sword. His body had become his biggest weakness. It seemed like he had to rethink his plan to cultivate his physical body. With his current ability, even if he released his physical body for another 8 to 10 times, the increase in strength he would obtain would still not be worth mentioning. However, with the increase in the strength of his physical body, his reaction, the speed of his sword, the tenacity of his nerves, and his eyesight would all be significantly strengthened. In this way, he would naturally have more confidence in dealing with danger. Let's not talk about those complicated things for now. Now, let me see just how powerful this natal divine sword that I have refined with all my cultivation is. Hidden Sword Venerable laughed. I'll wait and see. Tsing Hui stepped back slightly. The two of them were considered to be the only two-sword cultivators in the world. Naturally, there was a natural closeness between the two of them. It was like meeting a fellow countryman in a land full of foreigners. Even if the two of them had never met before, they could quickly become good friends. Hidden Sword Venerable clenched his fist and a ray of sword radiance appeared from his body. It landed on his hand and turned into the Hidden Edge Sword. The moment this natal holy sword that had been infused with the cultivation of an astronomical phenomenon expert appeared, a terrifying aura surged into the sky. Under the guidance of the sword will, it turned into an invincible and terrifying sword radiance. Even though the sword radiance was not under Hidden Sword Venerable's control, it was enough to make Tsing Hui's face turn serious. He had a feeling that the power of Hidden Sword Venerable's natal holy sword was much stronger than he had imagined. Hidden Edge, you've been hiding your power for so many years. Today, it's finally time for you to show your true power. Hidden Sword Saint laughed loudly. Suddenly his sword intent burst out. His sword intent fused with his sword and slashed forward. For a moment, the space in front of him seemed to be filled with sword light. Invisible ripples followed the sword light and tore the space and vitality around it apart. Even the light seemed to be distorted by the path of the sword light. It made the space and vitality around it look like it was being torn apart. Even the light seemed to be distorted in the path of the sword light, making it look like the space was being torn apart. Rumble! As Hidden Sword Swordmaster struck the ground with his sword, an earth-shaking rumble erupted from the ground. Countless rocks, plants, trees, and hills were brutally torn apart by this streak of sword light. A massive fissure that was 1,000 meters deep and 100,000 meters long was formed amidst this violent rumble. Massive shockwaves spread out in all directions with this fissure as the epicenter. Large amounts of mountains collapsed, trees were pulverized, and countless fierce beasts and spirit beasts were shaken to death. Even Ching Su, who was mentally prepared, still could not help but narrow his eyes when he saw this terrifying power that seemed to be on the level of a world-destroying calamity. Thankfully, Hidden Sword Venerable was testing the power of this sword strike in a wild mountain. If it was in a crowded place, this sword strike would not only leave a huge hole as long as over 100 miles on the ground, but also cause an earthquake that could reach hundreds of miles away, causing great suffering to all living beings within hundreds of miles. Even living beings within 1,000 miles away would feel the earthquake to a certain extent, shattering porcelain and breaking pots. Some dilapidated houses might even collapse. Islands like Dragonchant Island and Colored Glaze Island could be completely cut into two halves with just one slash. Even for a large island like Dragon Slaying Island, the tremor caused by this slash could bring about a devastating disaster. This power, it wasn't inferior to a great sacred art. To Hidden Sword Venerable, this power was just a sword that he used with his natal holy sword. Hidden Sword Venerable looked at the huge crack in the ground and seemed to be shocked by the power of this sword. After a while, he couldn't help but laugh. Great. This is the sword principle that I want. This is the true power of the ultimate sword principle in my heart. Killing a divine. This is not a lie. Two divine state experts are fighting to the death. If Hidden Sword Venerable intervenes when the enemy's divine state expert is distracted, he would be treated as a divine state expert. Tsing Hui said from the bottom of his heart. In terms of destructive power, Hidden Sword Venerable's natal holy sword was indeed not weaker than any divine state expert. Even if he were to attack, he could still fight a divine state expert head-on. What he was afraid of was, if the divine state expert diverted part of his power to stop his attack and used other means to attack him, the advantages of the ultimate sword principle were obvious, but so were its disadvantages. There were too many limitations. All right, Tsing Hui, it's your turn. Let me see how powerful your natal holy sword has become after cultivating the ultimate sword principle. Hidden Sword Venerable was very satisfied with the ultimate sword principle that he had created. After a while, he put his natal holy sword back into his body and continued to nourish it. Then he turned to look at Tsing Hui. Ching Su nodded. In the next moment, the Long Yuan sword had already appeared in his hand. Hidden Sword Venerable looked at the Long Yuan sword. When he saw the sword, he felt as if his mind was being taken over by the sword. However, he had a strong will and the long yuan sword wasn't attacking him. Therefore, this feeling didn't affect him much. Even so, this change still surprised him. Your sword. After the Dragon Abyss sword was fused with the power I cultivated, it underwent quite a few changes. It is completely different from the real Dragon Abyss sword. Based on these characteristics, I gave it a new name, the Scarlet Abyss sword. The Deep Red Sword. Hidden Sword Venerable looked at the rising fiery light on the deep red sword and nodded. Let's give it a try. Xing Hui nodded and stepped forward. The final result of giving up the bloodline principle to cultivate the ultimate sword principle depended on this moment. Chapter 493. Buzz Buzz. The sword essence exploded. In order to test the power of his natal legendary sword, Xing Hui unleashed all his sword essence. The sword intent nurtured by the Eastern Yang sword scripture was the purest of Yang in the first place. It was brilliant and vast, and whether it was the power of the Golden Crow or the power of the Torch Dragon, they all had an extraordinary relationship with the sun. As the Green Ruin sword intent drew out the power within the Scarlet Abyss sword, the Scarlet Abyss sword in his hand immediately erupted with light. It was like a scorching sun, shining so brightly that it was almost blinding. On one side, the sword Venerable Hidden Sword squinted his eyes slightly as he witnessed the profundity of Qing Su's attack. The brilliant sword intent in Qing Su's spiritual world reached its peak as well, and then, the sword was drawn. Like before, he slashed his sword at the ground. However, as he swung out, the Hidden Sword Venerable could clearly sense that his mind was completely attached to the Green Ruin strike, but before the strike had even struck the ground, a deafening rumble suddenly rang out from the ground it hit. The sword light had already cut into the ground. This sudden change made Hidden Sword Venerable's heart skip a beat. How could he only see half of the sword? If he was the enemy of this sword strike, he would have already been struck by this sword strike just as he was about to assume a defensive posture and defend with all his might. How shocking was that kind of destructive power and impact? Could it be that the sword transcended space? It was my senses that had been blinded. My spirit and vision were completely blinded by that sword strike. Even though that sword strike had already been executed, my senses, spirit, and thoughts were still stuck at the moment when that sword strike was executed. Hidden Sword Venerable, who instantly understood the power of the sword, was shocked. It's impossible to defend against such a sword technique. However, after a while, he glanced at the ground. When he saw the terrifying trench on the ground that was 60,000 meters long and 600 meters deep, his eyes lit up. Good. Qing Su also looked at the huge chasm on the ground, and a sliver of surprise flashed through his eyes. The power of your life-bound sword is far greater than I imagined. If an ordinary divine tier expert were to use their full strength to blast the ground, they would only be able to cause damage up to 100 kilometers in radius and tremors up to 1,000 kilometers, but the depth would only be 200 to 300 meters. Yet your sword is 60 kilometers long and less than 3 kilometers wide, but the depth of the fissure is 600 meters deep. Its power is not inferior to a divine tier expert's ability at all. Furthermore, I'm talking about an offensive natal legendary sword. The sword Venerable of the Hidden Sword had remained a great figure for over 1,000 years. He had even reached the celestial phenomenon realm 100 years ago, so he was obviously extremely experienced. His evaluation of the power of the Green Ruin's lifebound sword was basically close to the mark. Natal legendary sword has reached the level of an Almighty's natal legendary sword technique. Qing Su thought back to the various difficulties he had faced when he fused the extremely unstable golden core into his life-bound sword. He sighed emotionally at the benefits he had reaped. An almighty. After 2 years, he could truly be called an almighty. Even though, other than their attacks, they were much weaker than the almighties in all other aspects, but at least he was no longer defenseless against an almighty. In fact, if he met an almighty who did not know what was going on, he could use the backtracking skill to fight with them. He might even be able to defeat an almighty or even kill him. From this moment on, he dared to say that he had the power to protect himself in this world. It's not as simple as an ordinary almighty. As Tsing Hui sighed, Hidden Sword Venerable seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly said, "Tsing Hui, the power of your natal legendary sword is not as simple as it seems on the surface. It should have a certain effect of disrupting one's divine soul. I did not face the true power of your sword, but I could feel that my senses were disrupted by the mysterious power in your sword. As a result, I could clearly feel that your sword had just pierced through the air, but then there was a loud boom from the ground. It had already hit its target. With this mysterious change, its power should be even more shocking than what we have seen so far." Hearing Hidden Sword Venerable's words, Tsing Hui immediately understood. This was a change brought about by the power of the Torch Dragon. The Torch Dragon's divine body had the special ability of backlighting. Very good. Qing Su looked at the Scarlet Abyss sword in his hand. He never thought that this life-bound sword would mainly use the power of the Golden Crow, and it had even inherited a sliver of the Seraphic Dragon physique's characteristics. It really had lived up to all the time and effort he had spent on the Seraphic Dragon physique. You should properly explore this mysterious power. When the time comes, you should be able to unleash an unexpected effect when fighting with your enemies. Tsing Hui nodded. It seems that the ultimate sword Dao does have its merits. What we need to do next is to constantly strengthen our life-bound swords. The stronger the life-bound swords, the stronger the killing power. When my sword intent breaks through again and reaches the level of force, we might be able to break through the ultimate sword Dao's weakness of being easily ambushed and killed by others. Hidden Sword Venerable's eyes were burning with passion. Comprehend, force was the embryonic form of the domain. Force and the domain were equivalent to the relationship between the divine beast soul and the divine beast battle body. Although force would not have any substantial effect on a cultivator's cultivation, it was the foundation of the domain. Even if Tsing Hui, who had switched to the ultimate sword Dao, no longer needed to construct the domain, as long as sword force was formed, the power of sword force would be like a domain, enveloping his entire body. Even if he did not fully unleash it, he would still be able to monitor all movements within the range of sword force. This would greatly reduce the possibility of being ambushed. And as long as he was not ambushed with the ultimate sword Dao's fierce attacks, who would he be afraid of? The experiment is almost done. Let's go back. Hidden Sword Venerable said as he glanced at the deep scarlet sword in Tsing Hui's hand. The power in your natal legendary sword is still in the golden core state, but the power it unleashes is already comparable to a normal divine ability of an almighty. If this golden core is completed and gives birth to a divine ability, who knows how powerful it will be? A supreme grade golden core has a chance of giving birth to a great divine ability. If you give birth to a great divine ability, you will be invincible in the saint realm. Great divine ability. Tsing Hui's eyes flashed. His goal was not as simple as a great divine ability. If he was going to do it, he would do it to the best of his ability. He wanted to form the supreme golden core and give birth to a great divine ability. Once a great divine ability was formed, the cultivator would be invincible in the saint realm. Even the domain of the saints would be torn apart by the great divine ability. For example, Hidden Sword Venerable was like an almighty being who had cultivated a supreme god art. The only difference was that he didn't have the defensive means of those almighty beings who cultivated supreme god arts. Tsing Hui and the Hidden Sword Venerable left quickly. Less than half an hour after Tsing Hui and the Hidden Sword Venerable left, a figure suddenly appeared and stopped in the void. It was Broken Sword. 3 months ago, the Broken Sword Saint had already rushed from the Heaven Wasteland world to the Hidden Sword mainland. However, as Qing Su had always been with the Hidden Sword Swordmaster, and there was a powerful sword formation in the Burial Sword Peak where the Hidden Sword Swordmaster resided, even though he had borrowed a treasure from the Lihan Holy Man, he was not confident that he could break through the sword formation and suppress the Hidden Sword Swordmaster, who was said to have reached the lawful phenomenon of heaven and earth. One had to know that the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth realm was actually an explosive state where one merged with the heaven and earth and borrowed the power of heaven and earth to pour into one's body. Under this state, other than speed, the cultivator's offensive and defensive methods would all be greatly enhanced. At that time, one could completely throw out mystical abilities as if they were free, and the might of the mystical abilities would rise by an entire level. The only downside was that it would take some time to enter the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. And if there was the defense of the burial sword peak, even if he could use the treasure he borrowed from the Lihen holy man, it would be enough for the hidden sword venerable to enter the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth after he destroyed the formation. By then, there would be no other choice but to escape. Furthermore, Tsing Hui could still choose to use the avatar spell or even the teleportation spell to escape. Therefore, when he reached the hidden sword mainland, he chose to wait patiently. He waited for the chance when Tsing Hui was alone. This wait lasted for 3 months. 3 months later, the hidden sword venerable and Qing Su finally left the sect after so much difficulty, but they just had to erupt with their greatest speed, disappearing like a bolt of lightning. If they pursued him at full speed, he would be able to catch up, but if that happened, it would be impossible for him to hide from Qing Su and the hidden sword venerable. Damn it. But the huge commotion just now. Was the hidden sword venerable here to test his divine abilities? The hidden sword venerable looked at the 2 sword marks below, and his face turned ugly. Especially when he looked at the huge sword mark that was more than 100 kilometers long, his eyes narrowed. This kind of power? Is it possible for an lawful embodiment of heaven and earth cultivator to slash it? Could it be that the hidden sword venerable has broken through to the divine stage? Qing Su's potential is startling, and he has received the careful guidance of the venerable of hidden sword, a peak saint, and he has taken him in as a disciple. If he continues to grow, who knows how much he will grow? In particular, the venerable of hidden sword possesses an entire continent. He has accumulated countless resources over the past 1,000 years. If he accumulates all these resources on Qing Su, as he thought of this, the hidden sword venerable could not wait any longer. According to the information that I have collected about the hidden sword sect, the hidden sword venerable has a few enemies. Even though these people are not as strong as the hidden sword venerable in a one-on-one fight, and his biggest enemy is the hidden sword venerable who hid in the Black Flame sect in the Barren Lands, if I can gather all of them and use this treasure that I borrowed from the Lihen holy man, it will be enough to tempt them into taking the risk. The hidden sword venerable did not make this decision earlier because he was worried that these people would discover the secret of Tsing Hui's chaotic stage. However now, he could not care less. At this moment he used the Heavenly Ways information channel to contact the hidden sword venerable and his other enemies. Chapter 494. Hidden Sword Sect. Tsing Hui and Hidden Sword Honorable returned to their respective residences after gaining a clear understanding of their powers. Originally, Hidden Sword Honorable had planned to make arrangements for Tsing Hui. However, Tsing Hui decided to return to the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce after considering Hidden Sword Honorable's request and the fact that Su Yuan had become his disciple. The moment Tsing Hui returned to the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, he was welcomed by the entire Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Regardless of whether it was the elders of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce or those who were not optimistic about the future of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, all of them ran up to Tsing Hui without hesitation. Their faces were filled with respect. Tsing Hui did not pay much attention to them. After sending them away, he went with Su Xiao, Su Yuan, and the rest to the courtyard that he had been arranged to stay in. Looking at the courtyard that could only be considered above average compared to the entire Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, Su Xiao's eyes flashed with embarrassment. She quickly said, "Mr. Yu Qing, I will arrange a new residence for you, there's no need. This place is pretty good. I'm used to it." Tsing Hui did not want to fuss over such a small matter. After saying that, he added, "Yu Qing is just my alias. My real name is Tsing Hui." With his current cultivation, it was not a big deal for him to reveal his true identity. Perhaps his strength wasn't comprehensive when compared to those almighty figures at the 5th level of the Saint Realm who'd developed divine abilities. However, with the numerous enhancements provided by his chaotic realm, he would even be able to fight a true almighty figure. "Mr. Tsing Hui," Su Xiao and Su Tong were slightly stunned. However, they expressed their understanding. Both parties exchanged greetings in the courtyard for a while. Finally, Su Xiao stepped forward and took out a box that was half the height of a person from her personal space. She handed it to Tsing Hui. Mr. Tsing Hui, thank you for your help to the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. This is a token of our gratitude. Please accept it. Tsing Hui glanced at the box. Even though he hadn't opened the box yet, he already knew what was inside the box based on the prompt from the Chaos Temple's interface. It was an object that carried the Tao. Moreover, it contained a total of 241 Taoist rhymes. The Taoist rhyme contained in these Taoist items is 20% more than the remuneration your Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce promised. The extra is a token of appreciation from our Xin Hui Chamber of Commerce towards you, Mr. Tsing Hui. Su Xiao said sincerely, if it wasn't for the fact that our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce has been suppressed so much over the years and our business is not as good as before, I'm afraid that the Chamber of Commerce would be able to take out twice as many Tao-carrying items. When the time comes, the thank you gift to Mr. Tsing Hui wouldn't be so shabby. This isn't shabby at all. I'm very satisfied with these gifts, Tsing Hui said with a smile. Then, with a wave of his hand, he stored all the items into his personal space. 241 Taoist rhymes worth of Taoist rhymes was enough for him to raise his chaos level by another 2 levels. When the time came, he could consider improving his comprehension or sword talent to enhance his combat ability. As long as you're satisfied, Mr. Tsing Hui looked at Su Xiao in front of him and thought of his previous plans. It just so happens that I have a Chamber of Commerce in the Chaos Temple as well. If Miss Su Xiao is interested, why don't we work together? The Chaos Temple? Su Xiao's eyes lit up. To establish a Chamber of Commerce in the Chaos Temple, one must either have an almighty figure with the art of transformation to oversee it, or one must have powerful navigation abilities that allow one to travel between continents. This is the true model of a top Chamber of Commerce. If the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce can develop to become the #1 Chamber of Commerce in the Hidden Sword Continent, it'll be the pinnacle. If we can work together with the Chamber of Commerce in the Chaos Temple, Mr. Tsing Hui, the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce's future development will definitely usher in unprecedented glory. Tsing Hui nodded. Currently, the Primordial Chaos Chamber of Commerce's business capabilities were too lacking. Although the Hidden Sword Continent could not be compared to the Heaven Wasteland world, the overall standard of this continent was by no means weak. At the very least, it was much stronger than the Heavy Truth Continent, the Eastern Wasteland, and other continents. Even the Fortune Continent that Qing Su had visited before could not be compared to the Hidden Sword Continent in front of him. Furthermore, the Hidden Sword Sect was the dominant power in the Hidden Sword Continent. Furthermore, he had established a good relationship with the Hidden Sword Venerable's ancestor. He believed that with his support, it would not be difficult for the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, which was originally a top Chamber of Commerce, to develop into the #1 Chamber of Commerce on the continent. When the time came, they would be able to greatly enrich the ordinary business of the Primordial Chaos Chamber of Commerce and expand their influence in the Chaos Temple. Then that's settled. I'll let the management of the Primordial Chaos Chamber of Commerce contact you. Tsing Hui nodded. Finally, his gaze fell on Su Yuan. Su Yuan immediately stood up and respectfully bowed. Master. Yes, you should know that I'm not from the Hidden Sword Continent, and I won't be staying on the Hidden Sword Continent for long. Even though you're my disciple, I can't control your decision. Next, you have to make your own choice. When I leave the Hidden Sword Continent, do you intend to leave with me or stay in the Divine Grace Merchant Group on the Hidden Sword Continent? Su Yuan looked a little hesitant. On the other hand, Su Zhao's heart was blessed. Although she was a little reluctant to let her brother leave, it was a great opportunity for Su Yuan to become the disciple of such an important figure like Tsing Hui. This kind of opportunity could not be missed no matter what. Immediately, she hurriedly said, I hope that little brother can cultivate with Mr. Tsing Hui. And at this time, Su Yuan also came back to his senses and said cautiously, I also hope to cultivate with Master. Tsing Hui looked at Su Yuan. Originally, he only nurtured him as a coordinate and integrated a part of his consciousness into his spiritual world to ensure his absolute loyalty. But now, with the incarnation technique, transmission technique, and other abilities, coupled with his relationship with the hidden sword Venerable, the hidden sword continent was like a backyard to him. It did not have much meaning. It did not matter if Su Yuan followed him or not. Because of this, he asked just now. Now that Su Yuan was willing to leave the hidden sword continent with him, he could fulfill his promise to the hidden sword Venerable and teach him to become a talent. All right then, you will follow me from now on. Your cultivation has already reached the peak of the true Qi realm. The most important thing for you to do from the true Qi realm to the spirit refining realm is to have a clear understanding of your own martial Tao. On this point, I have strict requirements for you. I need you to comprehend your own sword intent. In a few days, I will ask the hidden sword Venerable for a divine sword. At that time, no matter if you eat or sleep, you have to hug the divine sword and not leave it at all. You have to comprehend the spirituality of the divine sword. Ask the hidden sword Venerable for a divine sword? Su Shao and Su Tong's eyes lit up. The hidden sword Venerable. If Su Yuan could obtain a divine sword from the hidden sword Venerable, his future in the hidden sword sect would be limitless. Even if he wanted to compete for the position of the hidden sword sect's patriarch, this qualification would be his greatest advantage. Other than eating and living with the divine sword, you have to go to the Wanjian Peak more often and practice your sword skills there. If possible, you can also ask the sword spirits of the Wanjian Peak for guidance. Ask the sword spirits of the Wanjian Peak for guidance. Su Tong was puzzled. Can the sword spirits guide us cultivators in the way of the sword? I remember that every time I went to the Myriad Swords Peak, the sword spirits would immediately draw their swords after they reported their sword names. At that time, you could either choose to be killed by the sword spirit or choose to explode with all your cultivation to defeat the sword spirit. Qing Su glanced at the confused Su Tong and said with some understanding, "In my opinion, there's not a single treasure in the entire hidden sword sect that can compare to the Myriad Swords Peak. As a result, make use of the special environment there to cultivate." Su Tong and Su Shao were still confused, but they knew that Xing Hui would not harm Su Yuan. After all, Su Yuan was able to recover his consciousness because of Xing Hui. They nodded seriously. "Master, I understand. I will go to the Wanjian Peak tomorrow. There is no hurry. Your cultivation is too low now and you can't judge the strength of the sword spirit. Once you meet a strong sword spirit, you will die even if you use all your strength. When you feel that you are connected to the divine sword, you should be able to judge the strength of the sword spirit vaguely. At that time, it will not be too late to go to the Wanjian Peak." Xing Hui instructed Su Shao, Su Tong, Su Yuan and the others to leave. Although he had fused all his cultivation into the Deep Scarlet Sword, he still had to explore the various changes contained in the Deep Scarlet Sword. In particular, the Deep Scarlet Sword's unique ability to confuse people's minds and affect their judgment should be studied carefully. If this ability was used well, it would definitely allow him to achieve twice the result with half the effort when fighting against enemies. Unknowingly, 2 days had passed while he was comprehending the Deep Scarlet Sword. When night fell, Su Yuan, as a disciple, appeared outside Xing Hui's room and asked, "Is Master resting?" "What's the matter?" Su Yuan appeared outside the room. "Master, the peak leader of the Steel Jade Peak wishes to meet you. The other peak leaders were all stopped by us. However, this peak leader of the Steel Jade Peak is a little different. Before he requested to meet you, he presented a gift." After saying that, Su Yuan took out a treasure that looked like a necklace. This necklace was naturally not a rare accessory. The moment Su Yuan took out the necklace, a notification appeared on the Chaos Temple interface. This was an item that contained 8 Taoist rhymes. A meeting gift with 8 Taoist rhymes? This peak master of the Iron Jade Peak is interesting. Qing Su chuckled. For the sake of his gift of 8 Taoist rhymes, there's no harm in meeting him. However, if he has other intentions, it'll depend on his own abilities. If he wants to be like the current sect master of the Hidden Sword sect, then he's got the wrong person. Bring him to the guest hall. "Yes, master." Su Yuan responded and quickly retreated. Chapter 495. Greetings, Mr. Tsinghui. Seeing Tsinghui arrive, Iron Jade Peak's Peak Master Zhou Zuanyu hurriedly bowed. Qing Su did not go out of his way to hide his true name, so his identity was obviously known by others. The Hidden Sword sect was 20 million kilometers away from the eastern wilderness. Coupled with the fact that there were countless people with similar names in the world, he was not worried that the people of the Hidden Sword sect would connect him to the Qing Su of the eastern wilderness just because of a name. Even if they did, it would not be a problem. With the Scarlet Abyss sword protecting him, he did not need to be so secretive. I wonder why Peak Master Zhou has come to visit me? I have taken the liberty of visiting Mr. Tsinghui because of the future of the Hidden Sword sect. Oh. Tsinghui did not comment. Zhou Zuanyu said in a deep voice, Mr. Tsinghui has stayed in the Hidden Sword sect for a few years. Even if he stayed in the Burial Sword Peak for 2 years to cultivate with the Ancestral Master, you should be able to see the biggest drawback that the Hidden Sword sect is facing. After 1,000 years of peace, the sect is no longer as lively as it used to be. A sect without vitality will inevitably decline in the long run. Now that the Ancestral Master is in charge, the Hidden Sword sect can sit back and relax, but once the Ancestral Master passes away, the future of the Hidden Sword sect will be worrying. 2 years ago, the North Moon Peak and Aurora Peak were wantonly destroyed by some people in the Hidden Sword sect. Tsinghui glanced at Zhou Zuanyu. He did not expect the Iron Jade Peak's Peak Master to have such guts. He actually dared to mention the Hidden Sword Venerable Sword. It's true that the Hidden Sword sect is willing to stay in one place, but that does not mean that other forces are willing to watch the Hidden Sword sect occupy the vast Hidden Sword continent. As far as I know, the Dao aura value that the Hidden Sword continent produces every year can be ranked in the top 30 in the entire Divine Wilderness, and among the many medium-sized continents, it can be ranked in the top 5. In the face of such huge benefits, which force would not be tempted? Tsinghui nodded. There were not many large continents in the Divine Wilderness world. Furthermore, not every large continent could produce more Dao aura than a medium continent. Therefore, Zhou Zuanyu's claim that the Divine Wilderness world's Dao aura production was in the top 30 was very pertinent. Because of this, many large and top-tier chaos organizations continued to stir up trouble on Hidden Sword Continent, even though they knew that Hidden Sword Venerable was there. That was why Hidden Sword Continent wasn't peaceful. Since you understand the problem the Hidden Sword sect is facing, then, how do you plan to solve it? There are 2 solutions. First of all, as long as our Hidden Sword sect can continuously produce top-notch experts, even if other chaos organizations are jealous of our Hidden Sword Continent's Taoist rhyme, they can only stir up trouble in the dark. It will be difficult for them to stir up any trouble. Top-notch experts. Qing Su thought about the current situation of the Hidden Sword sect and said, there are quite a lot of Golden Core experts in the Hidden Sword sect, but most of them have only condensed a low-grade Golden Core with the help of external forces to increase their lifespan. Let alone high-grade Golden Cores, there's only a handful of them who have the potential to condense a high-grade Golden Core. It's not easy to produce enough peak experts. Zhou Zuanyu said in a deep voice, so we thought of the second solution, which is to find a reliable expert to support the Hidden Sword sect's rule over the Hidden Sword continent. Tsinghui's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He suddenly thought of Hidden Sword Venerable's attitude towards him. Even though Hidden Sword Venerable had been in seclusion all these years, Tsinghui did not believe that he knew nothing about the Hidden Sword sect's current problems. Furthermore, when he thought of Hidden Sword Venerable's attitude towards him, Hidden Sword Venerable wanted to use him as a foreign aid. However, why did Hidden Sword Venerable choose him? He was not a member of the Hidden Sword sect, and his cultivation level was not even at the Golden Core stage. It was not worth it for Hidden Sword Venerable to invest so much in him. If Hidden Sword Venerable was willing to invest those resources in the Hidden Sword sect's Golden Core experts, it would not be difficult for him to cultivate a few high-grade Golden Core cultivators. As long as one of these high-grade Golden Core cultivators was not too unlucky, it would not be difficult for them to break through to the transcendent stage and derive a transcendent divine ability, However, Hidden Sword Venerable chose him when there was a way out. Tsing Hui pondered, perhaps there was a secret that he did not know about. Furthermore, he thought of the only thing that was strange about him, Myriad Sword's peak. Tsing Hui understood. It seemed that the Hidden Sword sect's biggest secret was hidden in the Myriad Sword's peak. Hidden Sword Venerable should know something about it, but he did not mention it. Perhaps it was not the right time. No matter what, he owed Hidden Sword Venerable a huge favor. If the Hidden Sword sect was in trouble in the future, he would not stand by and do nothing. Thinking of this, his gaze fell on Zhou Zuanyu. What you mean is, this reliable expert can't be me, right? Mr. Tsing Hui is right. The expert I am talking about is Mr. Tsing Hui, or rather, the expert behind Mr. Tsing Hui and Mr. Tsing Hui. I believe that the expert who can teach such an excellent disciple like Mr. Tsing Hui is definitely not an ordinary person. Furthermore, I have learned a little about Mr. Tsing Hui's background. Thinking of the commission from the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, I have more or less found out some information. This information is related to the Primal Chaos Chamber of Commerce that was established not long ago in the Chaos Temple. Speaking of this, Zhou Zuanyu quickly stood up and bowed to Tsing Hui and said, I have to apologize to Mr. Tsing Hui for investigating Mr. Tsing Hui's background. Since Tsing Hui had chosen to reveal his identity, he naturally did not want to continue hiding it. So, what have you found out? Zhou Zuanyu looked at Tsing Hui and asked respectfully, May I ask if Mr. Tsing Hui is the disciple of esteemed Zhu Zhao, one of the top 10 experts of Infinite Wilderness? Tsing Hui stared at Zhou Zuanyu. He had to admit that this peak master of the Iron Jade Peak had impressed him. He could not believe that he was able to find out such detailed information. From the fact that he could mention esteemed Zhu Zhao based on his identity, he could tell that this person should have guessed that he and Tsing Hui were the same person. How did you find out about this? Tsing Hui said non-committally. However, in Zhou Zuanyu's eyes, Qing Su's response had undoubtedly proved his relationship with the venerable Zhu Zhao. Zhou Zuanyu immediately let out a sigh of relief. He immediately said, compared to the Golden Crow bloodline, there are far fewer cultivators of the Shining Dragon bloodline, and once the Shining Dragon bloodline is mentioned, anyone would instinctively think of the venerable Zhu Zhao, sword master by Heng, and ancestor Pasu Ah, who is slightly inferior. Mr. Qing Su, you claim to have come under your master's orders. Someone who can teach an expert like you and have a master who can stand on equal footing with the founding ancestor must be in existence at the level of great powers. As a result, the range of choices has been infinitely narrowed down. Based on this range, I used the channels of the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets to collect and understand the information of the invincible giants, and finally discovered your location. Speaking of this, his tone paused slightly. After all, the scene of esteemed Zhu Zhao's personal disciple, Remnant Sword, going to the Eastern Wilderness to welcome you was witnessed by many powerhouses. In addition, early on in the Eastern Wilderness, there was a rumor that you had the support of an almighty behind you. Thinking carefully, it's not difficult to guess. Hearing this, Tsing Hui's face changed slightly. Even Zhou Zuanyu had found out about this, so it was not difficult for the people of the North Moon Peak to find out about this. He had ruined the plan of the North Moon Peak and the Aurora Peak to intervene in the affairs of the Hidden Sword Continent. These two forces would definitely try to collect information about him. Even if they could not find any clues about him in a short time, they would definitely hear about him after a long time. If it was only the North Moon Peak, he would not be afraid. But don't forget that the North Moon Peak was backed by the Way of Heaven, and Remnant Sword was also a high-level member of the Way of Heaven. Once Remnant Sword knew about this, he would chase him to the Hidden Sword Continent and kill him. Wait. Remnant Sword? A light flashed across Tsing Hui's eyes. Now, did he still need to be afraid of Remnant Sword? He wanted to know if he or the Way of Heaven's chess piece who had stepped into the realm of a powerful figure would be the one who would survive in the end. Thinking of this, Tsing Hui's gaze fell on Zhou Zuanyu again. It seems that you are dissatisfied with the Hidden Sword Peak being in charge of the Hidden Sword sect now. Zhou Zuanyu did not hide his ambition. He gritted his teeth slightly and said, At present, although the people of the Hidden Sword Peak are maintaining the normal operation of the Hidden Sword sect on the surface. In fact, the Hidden Sword sect's ruling power over the Hidden Sword continent is not as strong as before. Hundreds of years ago, the Hidden Sword sect was still the top on the Hidden Sword continent. Many geniuses on the Hidden Sword continent were proud to be able to join the Hidden Sword sect, but now, the entire Hidden Sword sect has a serious bureaucratic system. If cultivators want to get more cultivation resources, they no longer rely on their own talent and contributions to the sect, but on their background and who can win the favor of the higher-ups of the sect. Continue. The current Hidden Sword sect is extremely corrupt internally. Everyone is doing nothing and waiting for death. For their own power, they fight openly and secretly. They don't care about the rules of the sect. To the outside world, they are arrogant and domineering. They persecute and exploit the ordinary cultivators and small sections. Why did these small and medium-sized forces betray the Hidden Sword sect without hesitation all these years after receiving the support of the Chaos Organization? Why did these small and medium-sized forces betray the Hidden Sword sect without hesitation and go on the path of becoming enemies with the Hidden Sword sect? The reason is the Hidden Sword sect's relentless pressure. Now that the Founder Master is still here, this pressure is suppressed by his absolute power and cannot erupt. But once the Founder Master leaves, in addition to the grievances and conflicts accumulated over the past hundreds of years, the power formed will definitely destroy the entire Hidden Sword sect. At that time, all of us will become the sinners of the Hidden Sword sect. After saying this, Zhou Zuanyu bowed deeply to Tsing Hui and pleaded, "I am not willing to wait for this to really happen before making preparations. Only by preparing for a rainy day can we prevent the Hidden Sword sect from suffering huge losses. Therefore, I would like to ask Mr. Tsing Hui to support me and replace the Hidden Sword Peak to lead the Hidden Sword sect to a new glory." Chapter 496. Hand over your detailed plan for the future of the Hidden Sword sect and I will consider it. Tsing Hui said. It was obviously impossible for him to directly agree to Zhou Zuanyu's request. After all, the Hidden Sword sect was established by the Hidden Sword Honorable. Even if the Hidden Sword Honorable thought highly of him and entrusted him to take care of the Hidden Sword sect in the future, the Hidden Sword Honorable was still around and he did not have the right to dictate the future development of the Hidden Sword sect. However, even if Zhou Zuanyu's plan was feasible and the Hidden Sword Peak was truly hopeless, he could still suggest to the Hidden Sword Master to let Tai Yufeng take over the position. As for the final decision, it would still be up to the Hidden Sword Master. He would not have any additional words or attitude to influence the decision. Thank you for your trust, Mr. Tsing Hui. There's no need. Perhaps your visit this time is meaningless. It's better to take action than to be indifferent. Zhou Zuanyu smiled and took out a box from his personal space. The detailed plan for the development of the Hidden Sword sect is in this box. Mr. Tsing Hui can take a look at it whenever you have the time. Tsing Hui's expression changed slightly when Zhou Zuanyu took out the box. However, he did not say anything and only made a gesture to send him off. Zhou Zuanyu smiled and bade farewell. He quickly retreated. That's not a small sum. The Hidden Sword continent is indeed one of the top 30 continents in the Divine Wilderness. Tsing Hui waved his hand and opened the box. Inside the box, there were more than 30 items of different sizes. The total value of these items was a shocking 80 Taoist rhymes. 80 Taoist rhymes. Including the necklace from before, Zhou Zuanyu had taken out 88 Taoist rhymes worth of items to obtain his support to overthrow the Hidden Sword Peak. This amount was almost equivalent to half of the profits that Tsing Hui had plundered from a large sect in the Eastern Wilderness. The Hidden Sword sect is really rich. Tsing Hui kept the box and left the courtyard of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. He then rode on his sword and flew towards the Burial Sword Peak where the Hidden Sword Venerable was. Hidden Sword Venerable might have gotten used to living in the Burial Sword Peak. Even though he had finished his cultivation, he was still living in the Burial Sword Peak. The only difference was that there was a powerful sword formation in the Burial Sword Peak. No one could get close to the Burial Sword Peak. But now, if someone wanted to visit the Burial Sword Venerable, they could still be summoned. Greetings, Lord Tsinghui. As soon as Tsinghui landed outside of Hidden Sword Venerable's courtyard, a young man immediately came up to him and bowed respectfully. Hidden Sword Venerable is inside receiving a guest. I'll go report to Hidden Sword Venerable now. Please wait for a moment, Master Tsinghui. All right. Tsinghui nodded. Since Hidden Sword Venerable was entertaining guests, he did not want to disturb him. However, before the young man could go in to report, Hidden Sword Venerable's voice could be heard. Are you Tsinghui? Come in. Since Hidden Sword Venerable had summoned him, Tsinghui did not wait outside. Instead, he stepped into the living room under the young man's surprised gaze. In the living room, there were two middle-aged men, a middle-aged woman who looked to be in her 50s, and a young lady. They were talking about something anxiously. As Tsinghui entered, Hidden Sword Venerable waved his hand. All right, I'll investigate your matter. You can leave now. As long as you have a clear conscience, I won't punish you. The few of them replied respectfully. Among them, the young lady said coquettishly, Great-grandfather, you're no longer in seclusion. You need someone to follow you around. Why don't you let Xiaoqin serve you tea? Hidden Sword Venerable looked at the young lady beside him and was slightly stunned. After a while, he shook his head and said, I've come out of seclusion this time because I have something important to take care of. I won't be staying in the sect for too long. After I announce the results of a few matters tomorrow, I'll leave the Hidden Sword sect. Hence, I don't need you to follow me. Everything can wait until I'm done. The young lady was instantly disappointed. All right, you can all leave now. Master, we'll take our leave now. The old woman bowed respectfully to Hidden Sword Venerable and left with the other two middle-aged men and the young lady named Xiaoqin. When they left, they looked at Tsinghui and nodded slightly to Tsinghui. Tsinghui also nodded in response. Tsinghui knew all of them. One of them was the peak master of the famous Mingjian Peak in the Hidden Sword sect. The other was the great elder of the Mingjian Peak. As for the old woman, she was the fourth disciple of the Hidden Sword sect. She was also an expert who had cultivated to the Golden Core realm. She was over 1,200 years old this year and had been by Hidden Sword Venerable's side since before he became a powerful figure. As for the young lady, Tsinghui did not know her background. The famed Sword Peak was the most famous peak in the Hidden Sword sect. If the peaks of the Hidden Sword Peak were to be ranked, the Hidden Sword Peak would naturally be ranked first, followed by the North Moon Peak and Aurora Peak. Even if the famed Sword Peak wasn't ranked fourth, it would at least be ranked fifth. Tsinghui, you're here. Have a seat. Hidden Sword Venerable immediately greeted Tsinghui with a smile after the group left. His attitude was completely different from how he treated the people from Mingjian Peak. Sword Venerable. Tsinghui nodded at Hidden Sword Venerable and took out the box that Zhou Zuinyu had given him. He said, Many people have visited me in the past 2 days. One of them was quite interesting. He even gave me a generous gift before he left. Hidden Sword Venerable was the level master of the Chaos Realm. The Hidden Sword Venerable was a 29th class son of Chaos, so he obviously learned about the contents of the box from the Chaos Divine Hall as soon as possible. He immediately sneered, Looks like I was right after all. As soon as I revealed the slightest intention of reorganizing the Hidden Sword sect, all sorts of people have come running out. Zhou Zuinyu, I have some impression of this person. Even though he's not my direct disciple, he has received my guidance more than once. He's very capable and very talented, but he's just a little too scheming. Now, he's actually set his sights on you, Qing Su, in order to take over that position. He really isn't willing to let go of any opportunity. As he spoke, he had already opened the box. In addition to the many items that carried the Tao, there was also a plan for the future of the Hidden Sword sect. I think this plan is his real intention. Hidden Sword Venerable said. Tsinghui was slightly stunned when he heard this. He immediately realized that he had been tricked by Zhou Zuinyu. Zhou Zuinyu wasn't trying to be friendly with Hidden Sword Venerable. Instead, he was trying to show Hidden Sword Venerable that he wanted to be promoted. For this, Zhou Zuinyu didn't hesitate to fill in 80 Taoist spirit items. One had to admit that Hidden Sword Venerable was a man of great courage. He has some ideas. Xing Hui could not help but feel disappointed after he understood what was going on. He has the ability and the ideas. However, he is too scheming. This kind of person will never be able to achieve anything in the Tao of cultivation. Hidden Sword Venerable snorted. Xing Hui nodded. Zhou Xuanyu only spent some effort. However, there should be many people who have the same idea as him. Xing Hui, if you don't mind, I would like you to put on a show with me. What is it, Sword Venerable? Everyone in the Hidden Sword sect should understand how important you are to me now. They should also understand that I won't be staying in the Hidden Sword sect for long this time, so I'll be leaving temporarily. As a result, I want you, Qing Su, to take a good look at the lords of these mountains for me as a great elder and see who can succeed the Hidden Sword sect and take on the heavy responsibility of leading the Hidden Sword sect to new glory. Tell me when I return. Hidden Sword Venerable is going to leave? How long will it take? I need to go to Infinite Region to settle a grudge. The Eastern Wilderness is less than 2,000 kilometers away from here. If I am fast, it will take about 2 to 3 months. Even if I am slow, it will take no more than half a year. Therefore, I only need you to take care of the Hidden Sword sect for me for half a year. Half a year. Xing Hui's only danger was the broken sword. With the backtracking skill and the extreme sword principle, he was not afraid of the broken sword. Even if he was exposed, it would not matter. On the other hand, Meng Qi had to put his promise to the Firmament Master to kill Gong Hua, the future chosen one of the Heavenly Tao, on the agenda. He had been in seclusion in the Hidden Sword continent for 2 whole years. Now, he would be delayed for a few months to half a year. In addition, it would take a lot of time to go to Infinite Wasteland. He had only 2 years left. Sword Venerable, don't worry. I will take good care of the Hidden Sword sect for you in this half a year. I will also see who can lead the Hidden Sword sect to glory. Okay, I am not worried about you. Hidden Sword Venerable looked at Xing Hui and said, after changing to the extreme sword principle, we can only use our natal swords. Divine weapons are not essential to us. As for armors, they are useless if they cannot be integrated with the body. Fortunately, apart from divine weapons and armors, there is also the existence of flying swords. Although we cultivators of the sword principle can fly with sword chi, if we have a powerful flying sword, we will be able to protect ourselves. Coincidentally, I can be called a master swordsman, so I have many flying swords with me. I have selected a few for you according to the characteristics of your genuine chi. You can see which one is most suitable for you. With that, the Hidden Sword Venerable waved his hand and the 4 flying swords landed before Qing Su at the same time. At first, Xing Hui did not pay much attention to it. However, when he picked up one of the flying swords, he could not help but exclaim, "A level 12 flying sword?" Hidden Sword Venerable smiled and said, "After so many years, it is not surprising that I have accumulated a few level 12 flying swords." When Qing Su heard what the Sword Venerable of the Hidden Sword said, he immediately realized that the 4 flying swords had all reached a startling 12th class. One had to know that the price of a flying sword was usually 1 level higher than a divine weapon. Even in those large forces, a 12th level flying sword would require hundreds of Taoist rhymes to obtain. For those ordinary people, if they wanted to purchase a 12th level flying sword, wouldn't they need thousands of Taoist rhymes? However, there were 4 flying swords in front of Xing Hui. Choose one. You have a level 10 recovery ability, so your genuine chi will recover very quickly. Even if you use a level 12 flying sword and some elixirs, you will be able to maintain a balance between your genuine chi consumption and your genuine chi recovery speed. With a level 12 flying sword, if you want to go to Tianhuang region, you can fly 500,000 kilometers in a day and 9 million kilometers in less than 20 days. Will has been managing the book group and the book review page all these years. I really want to thank him for his hard work. Chapter 497. There was a tinge of envy in the Hidden Sword Venerable's voice. Only with the powerful recovery ability of the 10th order could one withstand the consumption of a 12th order flying sword at full speed. Otherwise, not to mention that Xing Hui was only at the Golden Core stage, Even if it was a celestial phenomenon expert, he would have to stop to catch his breath after a few hours of flying. If he continued to fly for a day and a night without rest, there was even the risk of his chi running out and falling from the sky. Sword Venerable, these flying swords are too valuable. It's just a 12th order flying sword. You should know that a 12th order flying sword that is very precious to others is nothing to me. In terms of value, these flying swords added together are not as valuable as the resources that you used to cultivate to the golden core stage. Moreover, even the resources that you used to cultivate to the golden core stage are not as valuable to me as the ultimate sword Dao. Therefore, don't decline. If you feel uneasy before I come back, just look after the Hidden Sword sect for me. Hidden Sword Venerable said with a strange look in his eyes. When he said the words, "before I come back," there was a slight change in his tone. However, Qing Su failed to notice the abnormality in the Hidden Sword Venerable's tone. Hearing how firm the Hidden Sword Venerable was, he could only choose the most suitable one out of the 4 flying swords and put it away. I'll choose this one. This flying sword is called the Sky Splitter. When the sword light pierces through the sky, its speed is extremely fast, as if it is tearing a crack in the sky. But since you are its owner, you should give it a name. No, I think the name Sky Splitter is good, Xing Hui said. Well then you go and rest. After Hidden Sword Venerable finished speaking, he glanced at the many Dao treasures in the box. At the same time, he put the future development plan of the Hidden Sword sect written by Zhou Zuanyu back into the box. Since these peak masters have accumulated a lot of wealth over the years, you can keep it. I want to see how many things they can give away. That's not right. I'll leave it with you. You can remember them one by one. When I come back from Heaven Wasteland, you can pass them to me. Also, you can take a look at this plan. Zhou Zuanyu is a lot of scheming, but he does have some ability. There are some things in this plan that I can learn from. Seeing this, Xing Hui thought that he might encounter similar situations in the future. He did not force it and waved his hand to keep the box in his personal space. I understand, I'll look at it when I get back. You don't have to worry too much about it. The most important thing for you now is to properly polish your golden core and let it mature. If you can nurture a divine ability in one go, then you can go anywhere in the world. Develop a divine power. In the past 2 years, Qing Su had increased his mental strength from below the 100th level to the astonishing 118th level. If the Scarlet Abyss Sword had only nurtured a regular ability, he could still suppress it, but if it had nurtured a great ability, it would be impossible for the great ability to fuse with the Scarlet Abyss Sword with his current mental strength. Once he condensed a sovereign's golden core and nurtured a supreme ability, the power of the ability would probably be able to directly break through the Scarlet Abyss Sword's restraints and shatter it. Therefore, even though his golden core had reached the standard of being able to develop a divine power, he still did not dare to take that step. He had to wait until his mental strength level reached 125, or even 130, before considering the final step of developing a divine power. After talking to Hidden Sword Venerable, Xing Hui returned to his room. He did not intend to use the 88 Dao rhymes from Zhou Zuanyu for the time being. However, he did not intend to keep the 200 Dao rhymes from the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce in his personal space. The most important thing was to convert the Dao rhymes into his own strength as soon as possible. If he did not convert the Dao rhymes into his own strength, what was the use of having so many Dao rhymes? Xing Hui focused his attention on the 241 Dao rhymes items in his personal space. Instantly, 200 Dao rhymes items turned into ashes. Correspondingly, his chaos level rose from 47 to 49. As his chaos level rose, Xing Hui's gaze fell on the many characteristics derived from the Son of Chaos. 2 chaos levels allowed him to control a large space. In terms of comprehension, he had already reached rank 5 and had undergone the first round of mutation. As for his talent in Sword Dao, it remained at rank 3. If he could add his 2 chaotic ranks to his talent in Sword Dao, his talent in Sword Dao would break through to rank 5 and undergo a mutation. Although he did not know what kind of change it would bring, he estimated that it would greatly reduce the difficulty for him to cultivate related sword techniques and comprehend sword intent in the future. The only problem was, Sword Dao talent increases a cultivator's ability to comprehend Sword Dao. But is the so-called Sword Dao talent in the Chaos Temple really the same as the one I need? Xing Hui muttered to himself. Hidden Sword Venerable could not answer this question, and neither could he himself. After a while, Xing Hui shifted his gaze from Sword Dao talent to comprehension. Comprehension had 2 levels. It could be upgraded from level 5 to level 7, but there would be no mutation or substantial growth in the process. Therefore, Xing Hui shifted his gaze again to the 2 characteristics of the backtrack skill and the divine skill. He did not know what new changes would occur when the backtrack skill reached level 6. As for the divine skill, if it was upgraded by another level, it would reach level 5. If both levels were upgraded at the same time, it would reach level 6. Once the divine skill reached level 6, his cultivation level would increase by 2 levels. Although the so-called 2 levels were only an increase in energy level, it was still significant to Xing Hui. Buzz buzz. The aura of the divine skill surged from Xing Hui's body. His cultivation level rose directly to the divine skill realm. However, because he had yet to derive any divine skill, he only had the energy of the divine skill realm. Even so, the power of the Deep Scarlet Sword still increased exponentially. If the Deep Scarlet Sword's power was previously comparable to a divine skill of a powerful being, it was now above that of a divine skill. It was close to the level of a divine skill. I'm still 10 levels away from level 59. In other words, I only have 10 levels of primal chaos that I can use. Including the 2 I have now, there's a total of 12. Among the 12 levels of primal chaos, I have to max out my comprehension talent. That takes up 5, so there's 7 left. 7 was just enough to max out his Sword Dao talent. But there would be new characteristics at level 50 and level 55. Could he be sure that those new characteristics would not come in handy? If it was a more powerful characteristic than the backtrack skill, he would be able to remain indifferent to the goal of raising his sword talent to the 10th level. After hesitating for a moment, Xing Hui finally crossed out the level 3 Sword Dao talent. Perhaps when he confirmed that his Sword Dao talent was of the same origin as his current Sword Dao, and that he would be able to improve his chaos level to level 60 and above, he would choose to increase his Sword Dao talent. But for now, I remember that the immortality realm has the most obvious improvement in the effects of the divine skill. In the Saint realm, the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth has the most obvious improvement in combat power. After that, it is the true element realm. However, the true element realm can only increase one's energy and prolong the duration of one's battle body. It does not increase one's explosive power by much. It is far from being comparable to the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. The lawful embodiment of heaven and earth is a mysterious state where one's body is integrated with heaven and earth. Every strike is supported by the power of heaven and earth. This power of heaven and earth is not the same as the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth in the Cyan Netherworld realm, but it is a kind of rule. Just like a mortal strike, the so-called power of heaven and earth in the Cyan Netherworld realm can be seen as striking with the wind. Comprehension was not an urgent requirement for the current him. The 2 most important points for him now were to refine his soul and enhance his mental strength. The other point was to accumulate resources so that his Jin Dan could transform once again and advance to the supremacy level. Instead, it was the increase in strength brought by the divine skill. Broken Sword probably already knew that he was in the Hidden Sword sect and could attack him at any time. As a powerful person, his chaotic level could not be lower than level 10. If he really fought to the death and allowed Broken Sword to use the divine art to raise his cultivation level to the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, he would be in an extremely passive position. Therefore, divine skill. Xing Hui made a prompt decision and focused his attention on the divine skill. Buzz buzz. In the next moment, the level 4 divine skill changed and rose to level 5. The level 5 divine skills change was the extension of time. This change was similar to most divine skills at level 5 and was not worth mentioning. After the divine skill reached level 5, Xing Hui did not stop. As the divine skill became blurry again, its level had risen to level 6. The level 6 divine skill had many options such as increasing the duration of the divine skill or reducing the cooldown time and increasing one's cultivation by 2 levels. Xing Hui did not hesitate to choose the option of increasing his cultivation by 2 levels. Instantly, the divine skill seemed to have returned to its original state. The duration and cooldown time were the same as a level 1 divine skill. The only change was that the cultivation level increased from 1 level to 2 levels. Level 2 divine skill can increase my cultivation to the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. However, broken sword may come at any time and the hidden sword venerable will leave the hidden sword sect. If I use the divine skill now, I will have to wait for a month for the cooldown time. Without a doubt, I will lose a powerful trump card. For a moment, he could only suppress this thought in his heart. In the future, there would be plenty of opportunities. With regret, Xing Hui calmed down and used his sword will to refine the deep scarlet sword that was stored in his dantian. A day passed quickly. The next morning, the entire hidden sword sect was bustling with activity. After 100 years, the hidden sword venerable finally began to reorganize the hidden sword sect's rules and regulations. Chapter 498. The hidden sword sect had a total of 36 mountains. Some of the weaker mountains only had never-ending stage experts, while the stronger mountains had several golden core stage experts. Just like 2 years ago, the North Moon Peak had 8 golden core stage experts, second only to the main peak, the hidden sword peak. Following the defection of the North Moon Peak's Mu Xingyi, Bei Shentong, and Bei Yuxian with the excuse of going out for training, the various guests also left the hidden sword sect. Now, the entire North Moon Peak only had 1 golden core stage expert left. Although it could still be called a powerful mountain, its reputation was far inferior to before. Following the hidden sword sect's general meeting, numerous golden core stage, never-ending stage, transformative stage, and true element stage experts rushed over from all directions and gathered on the sword evaluation platform. The originally lifeless hidden sword sect was suddenly filled with vitality, becoming incomparably lively, as if it had reappeared in its heyday. Seeing this, the old people who supported the hidden sword sect were extremely excited, as if they had been dreaming of this scene. As expected of the overlord sect that dominates the entire hidden sword continent. Xing Hui and the people from the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce arrived a little later. When he arrived, 80 to 90% of the experts from the hidden sword sect's 36 mountains had already arrived. At a glance, one powerful aura after another soared into the sky, intertwining into one. The momentum was so great that it was unknown how many times greater than that of the Hunyuan Heavenly Sect and the Creation Mysterious Sect. It had to be known that in terms of resources, the Eastern Wilderness was actually only slightly inferior to the Hidden Sword Continent. The reason it had fallen to such an extent was mainly because the 10 sacred sects each had the support of the Chaos Organization behind them. They fought and killed each other, and their strength couldn't be unified. If the Eastern Wilderness could really give birth to an almighty expert and completely unify the entire Eastern Wilderness, then even if it didn't develop to the scale of the Hidden Sword sect that had nearly 100 golden core stage experts, it wouldn't be a problem for the number of experts in the Eastern Wilderness to increase by 2 levels. With my current cultivation level, I can even kill the incarnation of a Tao Lord in one fell swoop. However, I can use the incarnation technique to use my personal space to teleport and travel. There must be such experts in the Heavenly Tao, but in these few years, the Heavenly Tao has been accumulating strength and discussing the distribution of benefits with the Divine Wilderness and Eternity. It didn't divert its attention to a small matter like the Eastern Wilderness, which allowed me to destroy the Creation Mysterious Sect. If I really faced the true body of a divine power expert, I might not be able to take advantage of it. Therefore, for safety's sake, it won't be too late to unify the Eastern Wilderness and integrate it into one after my cultivation level improves a little. After all, I've already plundered a wave of the Eastern Wilderness Taoist rhymes in the Eastern Wilderness. In the next 10 years, I won't be able to accumulate anything, so there's no need to rush. Looking at the glorious scene of the Hidden Sword sect, Tsing Hui naturally thought of the situation in the eastern wilderness. Compared to the Hidden Sword continent, it was obvious that he had a natural affinity with the eastern wilderness, which was the first continent to arrive. The Hidden Sword Venerable has arrived. Just as Tsing Hui was sizing up the experts below the Hidden Sword sect, a voice suddenly came from the void. Suddenly, the Hidden Sword sect experts, who were originally bustling with noise and discussion, all lowered their voices at the same time and looked in the direction of the loud shout. Sword radiance pierced through the sky. The Hidden Sword Venerable, who had become one with his sword, brought with him a majestic sword Dao aura and landed on one of the seats at the top of the sword grading platform. The majestic sword Dao aura that belonged to the ultimate sword Dao aura shot up into the sky and into the clouds. It was so powerful that it shocked all the cultivators of the prominent divine stage, true energy stage, transcendent stage, never-ending stage, and golden core stage. They all looked at the Hidden Sword Venerable with respect. Welcome, Hidden Sword Venerable. Along with the Hidden Sword Peak Lord, who was also the current sect leader of the Hidden Sword sect, Xiao Luing, who was known as the Sword Sage in the Hidden Sword continent, shouted. Everyone shouted at the same time and bowed to the Hidden Sword Venerable. Some of the people who had not seen the Hidden Sword Venerable for a long time even shouted excitedly to express their surprise at finally seeing the founder of the Hidden Sword sect. No need to be so polite. The Hidden Sword Venerable waved his hand at the crowd. It was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. Tsing Hui, my friend, please come up and take a seat. After everyone bowed, the Hidden Sword Venerable looked at Tsing Hui and said to Tsing Hui with a smile. Following his words, everyone looked at Tsing Hui. It should be known that everyone on the sword grading platform was the peak lord of the Hidden Sword sect. If they were not a peak lord, even if they were in the golden core stage, they would still have to stand below the sword grading platform. As for taking a seat, there were only 3 people who were qualified to take a seat. One was the Hidden Sword Venerable, the current sect leader of the Hidden Sword sect, Xiao Luing, and the other was the second disciple of the Hidden Sword Venerable, who was also one of the 2 elders that Tsing Hui had met in the 10,000 Swords Mountain, Duan Jianfeng. Among the 3 of them, the sect leader, Xiao Luing, had to take charge of the situation. Duan Jianfeng was already 1,900 years old and could barely maintain his golden core stage. No one could say anything about him taking a seat. However, Tsing Hui, for someone who was not from the Hidden Sword sect to be so valued by the Hidden Sword Venerable. At that moment, the peak lords and elders who had wanted to visit Tsing Hui but did not do so, all of them regretted it. Tsing Hui was more important to the Hidden Sword Venerable than they had imagined. Whoosh! Since the Hidden Sword Venerable had personally invited him, Tsing Hui could not ignore it. In a flash, he appeared beside the Hidden Sword Venerable. Sword Venerable. Have a seat. The Hidden Sword Venerable said with a smile. Tsing Hui did not decline and sat down. Immediately, the Hidden Sword Venerable's second disciple, Duan Jianfeng, and his grand disciple, Xiao Luing, looked at him. As Tsing Hui sat down, the Hidden Sword Venerable said loudly, I believe everyone knows why I have gathered all of you here. However, before we settle this matter, I have to announce that Tsing Hui will be the supreme elder of the Hidden Sword sect. Boom! As soon as the Hidden Sword Venerable finished his words, the crowd burst into an uproar. Many voices exploded and reverberated in the air above the sword grade arena. Supreme Elder! It's actually the Grand Elder? Although there are Supreme Elders in the 36 peaks of the Hidden Sword Peak, how can a Supreme Elder of the peak compare to a Supreme Elder of the entire Hidden Sword sect? There's only a single Great Elder in our entire Hidden Sword sect right now, and that's the Sword Venerable of the Hidden Sword. This Qing Su is actually going to be appointed as the second Great Elder of our Hidden Sword sect by the Sword Venerable? Doesn't that mean that he is second only to the Sword Venerable? For a moment, all kinds of discussions came from the cultivators below. Everyone looked at Tsing Hui in disbelief. Zhou Xuanyu, who had just given Tsing Hui a generous gift yesterday, clenched his fist tightly. I miscalculated. I didn't expect Tsing Hui to be the second supreme elder of the Hidden Sword sect. Ancestor values him more than I thought. I don't know if he saw through my real intention yesterday. No, regardless of whether he saw through it or not, I have to find a way to repair the relationship between the two of us as soon as possible. Supreme Elder, Mr. Tsing Hui has actually become the Supreme Elder of the Hidden Sword sect. Mr. Tsing Hui is the direct disciple of my younger brother. To be able to obtain his support, the development of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce will be smooth sailing from now on. Su Zhao's eyes were filled with excitement. Although she had overestimated Tsing Hui's position in the Hidden Sword Venerable's heart, she had never thought that the Hidden Sword Venerable would actually appoint Tsing Hui as the Supreme Elder. One had to know that the Supreme Elder of the Hidden Sword sect was completely different from the Supreme Elders of other sections. In the other sects, the Supreme Elder and the Supreme Elder jointly ruled the sect. In the Hidden Sword sect, the Supreme Elder was completely above the sect leader and the Supreme Elders Association. At this moment, Tsing Hui could also hear the weight of the Supreme Elder of the Hidden Sword sect from the discussions of the crowd. He quickly said to the Hidden Sword Venerable, "Sword Venerable, just give me the position of an ordinary elder. A Supreme Elder is on the same level as Sword Venerable. I don't deserve it." What? In these 2 years, we've always been on the same level. I'm a Supreme Elder, and you're a Supreme Elder too. If I just give you the title of an elder, what's the point? Plus, you promised me that you'll be the Supreme Elder of the Hidden Sword sect and help me look after the Hidden Sword sect. Tsing Hui couldn't help but smile bitterly. I thought that the Hidden Sword sect would also have a Supreme Elders Association. I didn't expect that the entire Hidden Sword sect would only have one Supreme Elder, Sword Venerable. This weight? If you really feel that you don't deserve the position of Supreme Elder, then you should pay more attention to the Hidden Sword sect. The Hidden Sword Venerable laughed loudly. Xiao Luiying and Duan Jianfeng's eyes widened in shock when they saw that the Hidden Sword Venerable was actually forcing Tsing Hui to be the Supreme Elder of the Hidden Sword sect. On the contrary, Tsing Hui seemed to be unwilling. They couldn't believe what their master was doing. However, the Hidden Sword Venerable didn't explain. Other than himself, no one knew the real reason why he was being so nice to Tsing Hui. This was related to the biggest secret of the Hidden Sword sect. Unless he was about to die, he wouldn't tell anyone this secret. Sword Venerable, you should know that I can't stay in the Hidden Sword sect for long. Every day counts. The Hidden Sword Venerable said with a smile. Seeing this, what else could Qing Su say? He could only nod. From today onwards, Tsing Hui will be the second Supreme Elder of the Hidden Sword sect. He will enjoy all the rights of a Supreme Elder. As the Hidden Sword Venerable said this, the powerful aura on his body appeared once again, suppressing everyone present. At this moment, many peak masters and elders were unhappy with the Hidden Sword Venerable's decision. However, they had to lower their heads. Yes, Grandmaster. After that, let's talk about the question that everyone is most concerned about. As the Hidden Sword Venerable said, he paused slightly. I've been in secluded cultivation recently, so I'm unable to make a detailed judgment regarding the rights and wrongs of the 36 peaks of our Hidden Sword Peak. With only 3 days, it would be irresponsible of the Hidden Sword sect to make any rash decisions. As a result, I plan on handing over the task of investigating the 36 peaks of our Hidden Sword sect to the Great Elder of the Qing Su ruins. The investigation will take at least 3 to 4 months, and at most half a year. At that time, I will follow the Great Elder's suggestion and reorganize the 36 peaks of the Hidden Sword sect. Those who have done well will be rewarded, and those who have done wrong will be punished. I will never wrong any loyal disciple of the Hidden Sword sect, nor will I tolerate anyone who threatens the interests of our Hidden Sword sect. Chapter 499. First, Hidden Sword Venerable had pulled Qing Su to the same level as him, giving him the identity of the second Great Elder of the Hidden Sword sect. Now, he had given Qing Su the authority to review the various peaks of the sect. This decision immediately caused an uproar. The gazes of the peak lords towards Qing Su were immediately filled with various mixed emotions. There was unwillingness, anger, hostility, reluctance, scrutiny, flattery, and so on and so forth. The atmosphere actually became rather strange at that moment. Grandmaster, when Xiao Luing heard Hidden Sword Venerable's decision, he immediately said hesitantly, "Master, even though Mr. Qing Su is an incredible genius in the way of the sword, he's still not a member of our Hidden Sword sect. Moreover, he's only been on the Hidden Sword continent for a little over 2 years, and he's been cultivating with you most of the time. He doesn't know much about our Hidden Sword sect. Isn't it a little inappropriate to give the responsibility of investigating the various peaks to Mr. Qing Su, Xiao Luing's words made the Hidden Sword Venerable's expression harden. He immediately looked at Xiao Luing. It's exactly because he's not a member of the Hidden Sword sect that his final conclusion is impartial. Our Hidden Sword sect has been around for over 1,000 years now. There are many organizations and clans in the sect, as well as many mountain peaks and departments. Who can guarantee that they can investigate and judge the 36 mountain peaks of our Hidden Sword sect without any ulterior motives? Or someone else? Xiao Luing's heart skipped a beat under Hidden Sword Supreme's serious gaze. The entire Hidden Sword sect could be said to have been developed by the Hidden Sword Honorable. The reason why the Hidden Sword sect was able to become the unshakable overlord of the Hidden Sword continent was all because of the Hidden Sword Honorable. Therefore, the Hidden Sword Honorable had a supreme position in the Hidden Sword sect. This could be seen from the fact that when the Hidden Sword Honorable came out of seclusion, countless cultivators were so excited that they could not control themselves and even cried bitterly. Right now, the Hidden Sword Venerable was clearly supporting Qing Su with everything he had. Anyone who dared to oppose him would basically be making an enemy out of the Hidden Sword Venerable. The Sword Venerable is right. When the time comes, we will definitely cooperate with Mr. Qing Su and investigate the various peaks. Xiao Luing quickly said. The Hidden Sword Venerable replied coldly. At the same time, he said, Qing Su has now become the second great elder of the Hidden Sword sect. Naturally, he has the authority of a great elder. During his investigation of the 36 peaks of the Hidden Sword sect, if anyone dares to go against him for any reason, my friend Qing Su may act and kill them without mercy. Hiss! As Hidden Sword Venerable spat out these 3 words, everyone present could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. The peak masters who were looking at Xing Hui with anger and disdain changed their expressions at the same time. Even Hidden Sword Peak, Famed Sword Peak, Tiu Peak and Aurora Peak, who were the most powerful peak masters, were shocked and quickly put away their thoughts. You still have 3 months to half a year. These 3 months to half a year will be the time for you to perform well. Whether or not you can atone for your crimes and make up for the mistakes you've made in the past few years will depend on your performance in these 3 months to half a year. Once the time limit is up, my friend Qing Su will deliver the final results of his investigation. As for those who remain stubborn, don't blame me for being merciless. Hidden Sword Supreme didn't show any mercy. Apparently, he wanted to use this opportunity to punish the Hidden Sword Peak so that the Hidden Sword sect wouldn't fall and be replaced by other sects in the Hidden Sword mainland. If such a thing were to happen, the core members of the Hidden Sword sect would definitely be brutally massacred by the replacement sections. When that time came, the entire Hidden Sword sect would inevitably be bathed in blood. Therefore, the Hidden Sword Venerable's strictness this time was actually saving them. Not many people in the Hidden Sword sect could think of this. Some people even thought that Hidden Sword Supreme was muddle-headed. He actually gave power to an outsider and didn't trust his own disciples. However, due to Hidden Sword Supreme's terrifying strength and unparalleled reputation, they didn't dare to say these words. Mr. Xing Hui, I'll leave this matter to you. Hidden Sword Supreme fiercely reprimanded the disciples of the Hidden Sword sect. Then he turned to Xing Hui and his attitude changed drastically. Don't worry, Hidden Sword Supreme. In these few months, I will do my best to find all the black sheep of the Hidden Sword sect and restore the Hidden Sword sect to its former glory. Xing Hui said solemnly. Since Hidden Sword Supreme trusted him so much, and in addition to the many favors he owed Hidden Sword Supreme, it was time for him to repay him. Good. Hidden Sword Supreme nodded happily. He then turned to the crowd and reprimanded them one by one. Then he waved his hand and said, Jianfeng Zhongshuan, Su Ran, the three of you come here. Hidden Sword Supreme's second disciple Duan Jianfeng, third disciple Zhongshuan, and fourth disciple Su Ran immediately came in front of Hidden Sword Supreme and bowed respectfully, Master. Hidden Sword Supreme replied and pointed at Tsing Hui. Although Tsing Hui isn't from the Hidden Sword sect, he's now on the same level as me. Moreover, he's a Supreme Elder. You should call him Junior Uncle. Junior Uncle? Duan Jianfeng, Zhongshuan, and Su Ran were slightly stunned. Sword Supreme, there's no need for that. Tsing Hui shook his head. He naturally knew that Hidden Sword Supreme was looking for a few assistants for him. After all, he was unfamiliar with the Hidden Sword sect. If he didn't have anyone to help him, it wouldn't be easy to investigate the 36 peaks. Why is there no need for that? Hidden Sword Supreme was rather stubborn. He looked at Duan Jianfeng and the other two and said sternly, What? Are you ignoring my words? Although Duan Jianfeng, Zhongshuan, and Su Ran were unwilling, they had no choice but to bow to Tsing Hui under the pressure of their master. Greetings, Junior Uncle Tsing Hui. Tsing Hui glanced at Hidden Sword Supreme. Seeing that Hidden Sword Supreme had made up his mind, he didn't say anything else. He just nodded and said, There's no need for that. Tsing Hui, my young friend, if there's anything you need to do while investigating the Hidden Sword sect, you can just ask them to do it. If I find out that anyone dares to go against me, Hidden Sword Supreme's expression became extremely stern, I'll destroy their cultivation and expel them from the sect. Master. Su Ran couldn't help but exclaim when she heard Hidden Sword Supreme's words. Even Xiao Luing, who was at the side, was terrified when he heard that. He was the son of Hidden Swordmaster's first disciple, Xiao Tsongyun, which was equivalent to Hidden Swordmaster's grand disciple. Xiao Tsongyun had died long before Hidden Swordmaster became an almighty. In Hidden Swordmaster's mind, Xiao Tsongyun was one level lower than Duan Jianfeng, Zhongxian, and Su Ran. Now that Hidden Swordmaster was so strict with his three lineal disciples, then as the sect master of Hidden Sword sect. Thinking of this, he could no longer remain calm and there was a flash of panic in his eyes. Are you clear? Hidden Sword Supreme said sternly. Duan Jianfeng, Zhongshuan, and Su Ran responded with grievance. Very good. Hidden Sword Supreme smiled faintly and then turned to Tsing Hui. We've made a fool of ourselves in front of you. However, Qing Su looked at the sword venerable of the Hidden Sword and nodded without saying anything. Next, Hidden Sword Venerable said a few words of encouragement to the peak leaders and the core disciples. He also promised them some benefits. Immediately, the crowd cheered. The meeting lasted for half a day and gradually came to an end. Then, everyone in Hidden Sword sect left one by one and Hidden Sword Supreme continued to return to Burial Sword Peak. However, other than the three disciples, there was also sect leader Xiao Luing who followed Hidden Sword Supreme to Burial Sword Peak, as well as a few elders and peak masters who thought they had some status. Obviously, they wanted to secretly persuade Hidden Sword Supreme to take back Tsing Hui's position as the second Supreme Elder and give him full authority to investigate the 36 peaks. However, these people were naturally reprimanded by Hidden Sword Supreme and left. Seeing this, the rest of the people didn't dare to do anything. The weaker peaks accepted their fate and tried to make up for their mistakes. On the other hand, some peaks who thought they had some power started to think of ways to make up for their mistakes. After a day, the storm in Hidden Sword sect gradually calmed down and Tsing Hui stepped into Burial Sword Peak again. Seeing Tsing Hui's arrival, Hidden Sword Supreme was very enthusiastic. Tsing Hui is here, sit. Sword Supreme. Tsing Hui looked at Hidden Sword Supreme and said seriously, Sword Supreme, is it very dangerous for you to go to Infinite Region to do something? Dangerous? Hidden Sword Supreme smiled and said, with my current cultivation level, how many people in the world do you think can pose a threat to me? Divine. I won't easily provoke a divine expert. Tsing Hui looked at Hidden Sword Supreme, as if trying to discern whether he was speaking the truth or not. However, Hidden Sword Supreme had lived for thousands of years. How could he be so easily seen through by Tsinghui? He smiled and said, "You don't think that I'm entrusting the Hidden Sword sect to you because I've handed over so many things to you, right? In fact, to me, Hidden Sword sect is a burden. Now that I've thrown this burden away, I feel relieved. You should be able to feel that with my current strength. How can Hidden Sword sect help me?" This. Tsinghui really didn't know how to answer. Of course there would be benefits, but in terms of strength. Even if everyone in Hidden Sword sect attacked Hidden Sword Supreme together, they would not be able to kill Hidden Sword Supreme. Well, don't think too much. I'll rest tomorrow and leave for Infinite Region the day after tomorrow. If everything goes well, I'll be back in 3 or 4 months. Don't worry about me. After hearing Hidden Sword Supreme's words, Tsinghui did not know how to persuade him, but he could only agree. Then Hidden Sword Supreme, be careful, I'll send you off. There's no need to send me off. 3 or 4 months is just a few days for us cultivators who have reached the Golden Core stage. Do you really need to send me off? You just have to help me find the black sheep of Hidden Sword sect. Oh, right. Hidden Sword Supreme seemed to have thought of something and took out a jade talisman. During this period of time, I plan to write a book about my experience in Extreme Sword Dao. When you're free, you can refer to it for me and see if there's anything I need to add. But don't be in a hurry to read it now, wait until I'm back and finish the second half. Okay. Tsinghui did not suspect anything and directly took the jade talisman and put it in his personal space. Seeing Tsinghui take the jade talisman, Hidden Sword Supreme felt a little relieved. However, this trace of strangeness only lasted for a moment and was quickly covered up. Soon, he returned to normal and began to talk about the Extreme Sword Dao with Tsinghui. Chapter 500. In a flying device that was thousands of kilometers away from the Hidden Sword sect. Alright, I'm going to Tianhuang region to settle some matters. You don't have to send me off like this. If I knew you would come, I wouldn't have told you the exact time of my departure. Hidden Sword Venerable was the one who spoke. Judging from his attire, he had already packed his things and was about to head to Tianhuang region. Apart from him, there was also Qing Su beside him on the flying arcane artifact to send him off. Originally, Qing Su was not a pretentious person, so he did not take the matter of seeing them off too seriously. However, for some reason, he suddenly wanted to see the Hidden Sword Venerable and the others off this morning, which was why he followed the Hidden Sword Venerable out of his flying arcane artifact and directly saw them off over 1,000 kilometers away. Then I'll stop here. I hope Sword Venerable can finish your business and return to the Hidden Sword sect. Tsinghui said. Hidden Sword Venerable smiled and waved his hand. Alright, it's just some trivial matters. Don't make a fuss. Let's stop here. We'll be out of the Hidden Sword continent if we continue to send you off. Tsinghui nodded and left the flying device. He landed on the heaven-splitting sword. The Hidden Sword sect can be considered as my blood, sweat, and tears. It is the only witness to my arrival on this continent. I have even invested thousands of years of my youth into it. Help me look after the Hidden Sword sect, and don't let it be used and destroyed by anyone with ill intentions. Sword Venerable, don't worry. Leave it to me. Tsinghui nodded. Then I'll wait for your performance in half a year. Hidden Sword Venerable laughed and said, Let's go. Instantly, the flying device started up again and turned into a beam of golden light and flew towards the end of the sky. Qing Su frowned as he watched the venerable hidden sword disappear into the horizon on his flying artifact. He felt like this matter was not as simple as he imagined it to be. However, now that Hidden Sword Venerable had switched to the extreme way of the sword, his combat strength was so strong that he could escape with his 12th order flying sword even if he couldn't defeat a Saint Realm cultivator. Therefore, he shouldn't be in any danger on planet Tianhuang. Even if Hidden Sword Venerable couldn't deal with the danger, there was nothing he could do to help. Therefore, he had to suppress the slight worry in his heart. If it's fast, it'll take 3 to 4 months. If it's slow, it'll take half a year. Then, let me properly rectify the Hidden Sword sect, and even the Hidden Sword continent, which is faintly showing a trace of chaos. Tsinghui mumbled to himself. He then turned around and headed back to the hidden sword sect. However, he had only flown for less than 10 kilometers when a terrifying pressure suddenly enveloped him. In the next moment, the space within several dozen kilometers seemed to be affected and disturbed by a terrifying power, becoming chaotic. At the same time, another power formed a strange existence that seemed like a barrier, rapidly enveloping the space within 30 kilometers. It was like a huge energy shield that enveloped Tsing-Hui. Remnant sword? The figure of the remnant sword flashed across Tsing-Hui's mind when he was suddenly attacked. Then, the sword radiance of his natal divine sword, deep red sword, suddenly burst out. The sword chi that swept out shook the void and was about to tear apart the energy shield. However, before Tsing-Hui could slash at the energy shield in front of him, a strong sense of danger swept over him. In the next moment, he saw a shadow of a heavenly rock appear. Then, it turned into light and violently tore apart the void with a deafening whistle. It was so fast that it almost exceeded Tsing-Hui's reaction speed. If Tsing-Hui hadn't drawn out his deep red sword and released the sword chi contained in it, he wouldn't have been able to block the sword radiance formed by the remnant sword battle constitution. Bang! The two sword chis collided head-on in the void and instantly collapsed into countless tiny sword radiances that tore through the void. The power contained in each of these sword radiances was not inferior to the full-strength attack of a true energy realm expert when he activated his battle constitution. If the battlefield was not in the void but on the ground, the aftermath of these scattered sword chis would have been able to tear apart the ground within a radius of dozens of miles. Whoosh! After blocking the sword radiance with difficulty, Tsing-Hui's figure retreated rapidly with a piercing look on his face. Although the sword radiance was shot at him, it was obviously not meant to kill him completely. It was precisely because this sword chi didn't have the intention to kill that the sword radiance that Tsing-Hui burst out with the deep red sword was able to block it. Otherwise, the final result wouldn't have been a tie. Tsing-Hui would have been directly pierced by the sword and his body would have been destroyed. How is this possible? You actually blocked my void sword shadow? In the void, a figure appeared. Just as Tsing-Hui guessed, it was the Heavenway chess piece, the broken sword that almost killed him in the eastern wilderness world. At this moment, Cruel Sword's gaze towards Ching Su was filled with shock as well as a sliver of disbelief. The void sword shadow was his divine power. This divine power was not fancy, but its advantages were very obvious. First, it was fast. Second, it was fierce. It was fierce and indestructible. When fighting with the enemy, he only needed to use this divine power to quickly secure the victory. Sometimes, even if the opponent was an almighty, they would be caught off guard by the divine power that he used in advance. They would be at a disadvantage from the beginning until they were completely defeated and even killed. But now, dust cleansing stone? Other than the dust cleansing stone, there should be other materials. This material interferes with the space extremely seriously. It's almost to the extent that it can seal the space. Tsing-Hui's gaze quickly swept across the energy boundary that enveloped him. He immediately understood the characteristics of the energy boundary. This is a treasure that I specially borrowed. It's called the hatred boundary. It's specially used to trap and kill cultivators like you who are proficient in the incarnation spell and teleportation spell. Even though the hatred boundary can't completely isolate the incarnation spell and teleportation spell of the high-level Son of Chaos, it can increase the difficulty of the incarnation spell and teleportation spell and prolong the time. This will cause the teleportation spell to go wrong and get lost in the space mezzanine. The space mezzanine can only be broken by powerful cultivators who are in the virtual shattering realm. Those who are below the virtual shattering realm will definitely die if they fall into the space mezzanine. In other words, using the teleportation spell is equivalent to courting death. There was a cruel smile on the broken sword's face. As for the incarnation spell, after the time has been extended, do you think I will give you the chance to sense the coordinates and send the incarnation spell? Hatred boundary? This is one of the symbolic treasures of the hatred holy man. I will record this scene with the shadow retaining stone. This object will be the evidence that you are the son of the hatred holy man and have sided with the heaven way. As for using the incarnation spell and the teleportation spell to escape, Broken Sword, do you really think that I am still the same as 2 years ago, unable to retaliate at all in front of you? Today, I want to see how an almighty like you is going to defeat me. Xing Hui had already mentally prepared himself to be attacked by the Broken Sword a few days ago. Now that he was deep in the hatred boundary, not only did he not feel depressed, but he also let out a long roar and the deep scarlet sword exploded with sword radiance. The surging sword mind was so strong that Broken Sword, who was confident of victory, changed his expression. I will not give you the chance to use the shadow retaining stone. Furthermore, you have been stripped of your authority in the Sky Dome world. You will not be able to meet the sages in a short period of time. By the time you meet the sages, I will be able to kill you 10 times over. Especially when you are distracted by the Chaos Holy Hall, you will die even faster. Although you have learned some techniques from the Hidden Swordmaster in these 2 years, you are still only in the Aurus Core stage. Even if you can unleash the power of your Aurus Core, what can you do? I have even killed a real Aurus Core stage expert, let alone you. I would like to see how many times your Aurus Core can withstand your attacks. The pressure brought by the explosion of Xing Hui's sword mind had indeed caused Broken Sword's expression to change. However, he had absolute confidence in his own cultivation. Not only did he not retreat, he also shouted and the heavenly rock sacred body produced a void sword shadow that shot out crazily. The power and speed of the sword radiance were not inferior to Xing Hui's sword radiance at all. This sword chi, Xing Hui's expression turned serious. His sword mind rose and the sword chi of the deep scarlet sword soared into the sky. Sword radiance whistled and shot out. Attack again. This was the only method of the extreme sword Dao. Using a storm of attacks to leave the opponent no room to breathe, until the opponent was completely killed. In an instant, streaks of sword radiance collided violently in the void. The attack between the two could be said to be at full strength. Countless streaks of sword chi shot out in all directions in the process of the collision, cutting the void in a radius of tens of kilometers into pieces. The sharp and fragmented sword chi was enough to crush any true energy stage expert who recklessly stepped into this area into powder. Such an outcome immediately caused Broken Sword's expression to turn serious. He was also a heavenly talent who had condensed the holy body. He had also received careful guidance from the Li Hen Holy Man and the Zhu Zhao Holy Man, 2 supreme giants of the divine stage. He had already explored the power of his own Abhijna to the extreme. Among the many Aurus Core stage cultivators who had cultivated ordinary Abhijna, he was definitely an outstanding existence. However, now that he had unleashed his Abhijna, it was actually unable to do anything to Xing Hui, a mere Aurus Core stage cultivator. This scene was unbelievable. Impossible. No matter how fast his growth is, it is impossible for him to reach a level that is not inferior to the great beings in a short 2 years. There must be a flaw. Broken Sword's thought process was extremely fast and his eyes shone brightly. Battles were never purely a contest of brute force. In the next moment, he seemed to have sensed something and a trace of joy flashed across his face. His strength is completely built on the attack formed by the sharp sword chi. As long as I avoid his strongest attack, I can change between real and illusory and directly kill his original body. I will definitely be able to defeat him in one fell swoop. Broken Sword, who had seen through Xing Hui's weakness, immediately stopped fighting head-on with Xing Hui. His figure suddenly flashed and the void sword shadow continuously shot towards Xing Hui. At the same time, he was also multitasking. A sharp sword radiance followed closely behind the void sword shadow and slashed towards Xing Hui. Xing Hui, who had blocked the void sword shadow, was completely unable to block the other sword radiance and was instantly pierced through by that sword radiance. That's it. It's really like this. His strength is only in his attack. His attack has reached the level of the Aurus Core stage, but his transformation, movement and defensive methods are still at the level of the Aurus Core stage. No, not the Aurus core stage. It is even inferior to the Aurus core stage. The sword hit its target and his guess was confirmed. Broken Sword's eyes instantly lit up. His attack is still not strong enough. And Tsing felt that the wound on his body that was pierced by the sword radiance was rapidly healing and his brows furrowed. Then, let's make it stronger. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.